My name is Jin Park, and until the strangest Tuesday in human history, my financial strategy was extremely simple. Survive until Friday and hope nobody checked my bank account. I was a second-year college student, which meant I owned 3 hoodies, 1 frying pan, a laptop that screamed whenever I opened more than 6 tabs, and exactly $327.14 to my name. That money was not savings. Calling it savings would have been disrespectful to actual savings. It was rent, food, bus fare, emergency money, textbook money, and the small amount I had mentally reserved for pretending I still had a social life. The night before everything changed, I went to sleep after calculating whether instant noodles became cheaper if I broke each brick in half, and convinced myself it counted as 2 meals. The answer was no, but I was tired enough to believe it. At 7:12 the next morning, my alarm went off. I slapped my phone, missed, slapped the wall, hit my elbow, and woke up angry at architecture. Nothing looked different. The ceiling still had the water stain shaped like a depressed chicken. My tiny apartment still had 1 chair that leaned left for political reasons. My refrigerator still contained mustard, 2 eggs, and a bottle of water I had been refilling for so long that I considered it family. I checked my bank app while brushing my teeth. $327.14. Still broke. Perfect. I shoved my notebook into my backpack and ran for the bus because my economics professor had a rule that anyone arriving more than 5 minutes late had to explain inflation to the class without using the word money. I had already suffered that punishment once. I was not doing it again. The bus rolled up just as I reached the stop. I jumped on, pulled out my transit card, and noticed the fare screen. It said $0. I stared at it. Then I stared at the driver. Then I stared at it again. I had slept 4 hours. My brain decided this was clearly a decimal glitch. The usual fare was around $2. Maybe the screen was broken. Maybe the city had finally admitted buses should be cheaper. Maybe I was still asleep and would soon wake up in a world where my landlord had forgotten I existed. I tapped my card. Error. The driver, a middle-aged guy named Mr. Han who had seen me sprint for this bus at least 50 times, pointed at the little cash tray. I apologized, dug into my wallet, and pulled out a $1 bill. The moment I held it up, the entire bus went silent. Not regular quiet. I mean anime final battle before the swords collide quiet. A baby stopped crying. A man lowered his newspaper. A woman in a business suit slowly removed 1 earbud. Some guy near the back whispered, "Is that a whole $1?" I looked down at the bill. Then I looked at him. Yes? Nobody moved. Mr. Han's face turned white. I thought maybe I had accidentally handed him counterfeit money. I checked the bill against the light. It was George Washington. Same tired expression. Same green paper. Same $1 I had received as change from a laundromat 3 days earlier. Mr. Han carefully took it using both hands. He held it like I had just given him the deed to a castle. Then he looked at the fare display, looked back at the dollar, and said, "Sir, I cannot make change." I laughed. Nobody else laughed. I stopped laughing. "How much change?" I asked. He swallowed. 99.9999 cents. At that point, I knew something was wrong. I stepped aside and took a seat while the passengers continued staring at me like I had boarded the bus carrying a live tiger. My phone vibrated. I opened the news. Every headline was some variation of the same sentence. Global monetary normalization completed overnight. I assumed it was one of those boring financial events where men in suits moved numbers around and then explained why groceries were somehow more expensive. Then I read the first paragraph. At midnight, every registered price, wage, bank balance, debt, salary, pension, corporate valuation, tax amount, and circulating unit of currency had been divided by 1 million. Nobody knew why. Nobody knew how. It had happened everywhere at once. A person who had $100,000 in savings now had $0.10. A worker earning $40,000 per year now earned $0.04 per year. A house that cost $500,000 yesterday now costs $0.50. A sports car that cost $300,000 yesterday now costs $0.30. A coffee that cost $5 yesterday now costs $0. The numbers had changed, but the relative economy had stayed the same. At least, that was what the article claimed. I immediately opened my bank app again. $327.14. I refreshed it. $327.14. I closed the app. I reopened it. $327.14. I restarted my phone. $327.14. I stared at the screen until my stop passed. Then I kept staring until the bus reached the end of the route. Mr. Han finally turned around and asked if I was okay. I looked at him and asked the most important question of my life. "How much does this bus cost?" He blinked. "The bus?" "The actual bus." He checked something on the City Fleet tablet. "About 18 cents. I looked at the $1 bill in his hand. then at the bus, then back at him. Did I just overpay for bus fare by enough to buy 5 buses? Mr. Han looked sick. One of the passengers whispered, 6, if he buys used. That was the moment my poverty ended so violently that I almost missed it. I got off the bus 3 miles past campus and sat on a bench. For 10 full seconds I considered the possibility that my phone, the bus, and everyone around me were part of an elaborate prank. Then I walked into a convenience store. A breakfast sandwich was marked $0. A bottle of orange juice was $0. A pack of gum was $0. The cashier looked exhausted and had a handwritten sign saying, "No physical cash above 1 cent. We are not a bank." I picked up the sandwich, juice, gum, 2 protein bars, a giant bag of chips, and a box of cereal I normally only stared at because it was overpriced. The total came to $0. I used my phone. The payment app refused. Minimum transfer, $0.01. The cashier and I stared at each other. I said, "What happens if I pay 1 cent? He looked terrified. "Sir, please don't." That sentence made me want to do it more. I placed a penny on the counter. The cashier backed away. A woman stocking shelves gasped. The manager came out of the back office at a speed that suggested somebody had announced a fire. He looked at the penny. He looked at my groceries. He looked at me. Then he bowed. "Would you like the store?" I thought he was joking. He was not. The entire convenience store franchise location, inventory included, had been valued that morning at $0. My penny was enough to cover my breakfast and, apparently, a meaningful percentage of the building's business value. I pushed the penny toward the cashier. "I just want the sandwich," the manager whispered. "We cannot make change." I had discovered my first real problem as one of the richest people alive. I was too rich to buy breakfast. I sat outside eating for free because the manager refused to take my penny and decided I needed information before I accidentally purchased a grocery chain by ordering noodles. I searched the news harder. The event had been named the Great Decimal Shift, which sounded like a dance move performed by accountants. Governments were telling everyone not to panic because, technically, purchasing power was supposed to remain the same. If your salary became 1/millionth as large and prices also became 1/millionth as large, your life should continue normally. There were problems, obviously. Vending machines could not display enough zeros. Old cash registers were rounding entire meals down to free. Parking meters were accepting 1 penny and giving people thousands of years. One casino had shut down after a man inserted a nickel and the machine interpreted it as a high roller deposit large enough to reserve the entire building. But the biggest issue was physical cash. The smallest common coin was now an outrageous unit of wealth. A penny had the same relative purchasing power that $10,000 had yesterday. A dollar was equivalent to 1 million old dollars, and I had cash in my wallet. I opened it under the table like I was checking contraband. 3 $1 bills, 2 5s, a 10, 4 quarters, 6 dimes, 3 nickels, 9 pennies. I'd carried around what was now the financial equivalent of a private island because I was too lazy to empty my pockets after doing laundry. But that still did not explain my bank account. Everyone else's deposits had been divided by 1 million. Mine had not. I called my bank. The automated system immediately transferred me to something called Ultra Sovereign Priority Assistance. A human answered before the first ring finished. "Good morning, Mr. Park." That was alarming by itself. My bank had never called me Mr. Park. Usually it called me account holder right before charging a fee. The woman sounded so polite I became suspicious. "I'm calling because my balance looks wrong." There was a pause. "Yes, sir, we noticed." "How wrong?" Another pause. "Extremely." I asked whether the bank had divided my account by 1 million. She said no. I asked why. She said my account had been flagged as legacy exempt by the National Settlement Network at 12:00 a.m. I asked what legacy exempt meant. She said nobody knew. I asked how many accounts had the same flag. She said she was not authorized to tell me. Then she added, very carefully, "But yours is the first one we have confirmed." I nearly dropped my phone. I asked what my $327.14 was worth in practical terms now. She became quiet again. Finally, she said, "Our private wealth division estimates that your liquid balance exceeds the current market capitalization of several national banking groups combined." I looked at the breakfast sandwich in my hand. Half the egg had fallen out. I had mustard on my sleeve. "Can I get a debit card that works for 6 decimal places?" I asked. She promised me a new one by noon. I hung up and checked the time. I was now 43 minutes late to economics class. For some reason, I still panicked. That is what being broke does to your brain. You can become richer than a corporation before breakfast, but your body still thinks Professor Ellis is about to destroy your future because you missed attendance. I sprinted toward campus. Then I stopped. A taxi was waiting at the curb. Its meter showed $0 per mile. I opened the door. The driver asked where I was going. I said Westbridge University. Then I remembered the payment problem. How do people pay you now? He pointed to a new government microtransaction app. I downloaded it, linked my bank, and watched the app freeze. A message appeared. Balance exceeds standard consumer safety range. The driver leaned over, saw $327.14, and nearly drove into a mailbox while parked. I told him to keep his eyes forward. He drove me to campus in absolute silence. The fare came to $0. The app worked after making me confirm 7 times that I really intended to spend such a significant micro value. I added a tip of $0. The driver looked at the screen. Then he looked at me in the mirror. His eyes started watering. Apparently, I had tipped him the equivalent of $7 old, which was normal. But because everyone was still mentally adjusting to the zeros, he reacted like I had bought him a yacht. I walked into class 48 minutes late. Professor Ellis stopped in the middle of a sentence about the Great Decimal Shift. Every student turned toward me. Then a guy near the window recognized me from the bus. His phone was already open to a video. I saw the thumbnail. It was my face. The title read, "Unknown Student Casually Pays $1 whole for bus ride." The video had 2.8 million views. I had become famous before finishing breakfast. Professor Ellis stared at me. "Mr. Park," he said, "is there something you would like to share with the class?" I considered lying. Then my phone buzzed again. My bank sent a notification. "Your spending limit has been increased to $50 per day." The class could see my screen because the student behind me leaned over and screamed. Everything exploded. People stood up. Someone dropped a laptop. One student asked if I was the Federal Reserve. Another asked if I was single. A third asked if I would sponsor his capstone project about edible concrete. Professor Ellis banged a marker against the desk and demanded everyone calm down. Then he walked over to me and quietly asked, "Is the screenshot real?" I told him yes. He sat down. For the first time in my life, I watched an economics professor run out of economics. The class became an emergency lecture about what my existence meant. Apparently, before the shift, the entire campus endowment had been worth around $2.40 billion. After division by 1 million, it was worth around $2,400. That was still far more than my $327, so I was not richer than the university. I felt strangely relieved. Then Professor Ellis corrected himself. That figure includes restricted funds, land trusts, and illiquid assets. The operating corporation itself was revalued this morning at around $0.86. I slowly looked up. My classmates slowly looked at me. Professor Ellis closed his eyes. "You could theoretically buy the company that runs this university for less than $1. The entire room went silent again. I hated that silence already. I raised one hand. Would that let me cancel the 8 a.m. attendance policy? Professor Ellis pointed at the door. "Get out." That was fair. Outside the classroom, my best friend Eli Vargas was waiting for me. Eli had skipped class completely because, according to him, civilization had become too decimal for education. He grabbed my shoulders. "Jin, tell me you did not spend $1 on a bus." "I thought the machine was broken." "You could have bought the bus." "I know that now." "You could have bought several buses." "I know." "You tipped a municipal employee enough to make him independently wealthy." "I did not know that part." Eli showed me the video. Mr. Han had apparently taken the bill home after his supervisor told him the transit system could not legally hold such an oversized payment without filing a capital event report. The $1 bill was now inside a plastic sleeve on his kitchen table. News reporters were outside his apartment. A financial commentator had called it the most aggressive bus transaction in modern history. I rubbed my face. This day started 4 hours ago. Eli grinned. "That means we still have time to buy a supercar before lunch." I told him absolutely not. Then we walked past a luxury car dealership. A bright silver supercar sat on a rotating platform behind the glass. Yesterday, I knew enough about cars to know I could never afford the tires. Today, the price tag said $0.31. I stopped walking. Eli stopped walking. We both slowly turned toward the window. The car seemed to turn toward us. I told myself I was only curious. 5 minutes later, I was inside. The showroom had the nervous energy of a museum during an earthquake. Salespeople were rewriting every price tag by hand. Their payment system had been updated twice that morning. One employee was arguing with a printer because it kept removing unnecessary zeros. A salesman approached us and started his normal speech. Then he recognized me. He looked at my face. He looked at Eli's phone, which still had the bus video open. Then he looked at my wallet sticking slightly out of my pocket. His posture changed so fast I heard his jacket move. Mr. Park. I had no idea how he knew my name already. The internet had apparently found my student profile. I pointed at the silver car. How much is that actually? $0.31. That sounds ridiculous. It sounded more normal yesterday. Does it run? It has 12 miles on it. What is the monthly payment? He stared at me. Sir, I strongly recommend you do not finance 31 cents. Eli made a choking sound behind me. I tried to keep a straight face. The salesman explained that the dealership itself was having trouble. Their whole inventory had shrunk in price, but the digital payment rails were unstable. Rich customers who used to walk in and wire hundreds of thousands now had balances measured in cents. Nobody knew how to handle deposits smaller than a grain of sand. Then he asked what I wanted to spend. I should have said nothing. I should have walked away. Instead, I said, could I test drive it? He handed me the keys before I finished the sentence. That was how I learned that extreme wealth is dangerous for the same reason cheat codes are dangerous. Nobody tells you no fast enough. 10 minutes later, Eli was in the passenger seat screaming. I was gripping a steering wheel covered in leather softer than my pillow, and the salesman was standing on the curb questioning his career choices. The car accelerated so hard my soul arrived at the next traffic light before my body. I had driven cheap hatchbacks, delivery vans, and my aunt's ancient sedan that smelled like peppermint. This thing did not drive. It teleported with paperwork. I laughed so hard I missed a turn. We looped back to the dealership. I parked crooked across 2 spaces because wealth had not improved my parking skills. The salesman asked if I wanted it. I looked at the price. 31 cents. My entire old life had been built around avoiding unnecessary expenses. I once walked 40 minutes in the rain because a rideshare was $12. Now a machine built from carbon fiber and bad decisions costs less than the loose coins in my desk drawer. I told him yes. He smiled. Then the finance manager came over and whispered something into his ear. The salesman's smile vanished. What? I asked. There is a problem. I expected taxes, insurance, license fees, something normal. The salesman swallowed. Our card terminal has a maximum transaction of 10 cents. I laughed. He did not. Apparently, after the shift, regulators had temporarily capped ordinary point-of-sale transfers because people were accidentally sending life-changing amounts while thinking in old prices. To buy a 31-cent supercar, I would need a special high-value authorization. The approval could take hours. I looked at the car. I looked at my wallet. Then I remembered something. You accept cash? The salesman froze. Ely whispered, Jin, don't. I pulled out a quarter, a nickel, and a penny. 31 cents. The finance manager saw the coins and dropped his tablet. The showroom went quiet. I put the coins on the desk. A woman buying a sedan covered her mouth. Somebody took a photo. The finance manager asked if I understood that I was paying in physical currency. I said yes. He asked if I wanted armed transport for the coins. I said no. He asked if I wanted the dealership to issue a formal public statement about the transaction. I said absolutely not. 7 minutes later, the dealership issued a formal public statement about the transaction. By the time Eli and I drove away, the headline was already spreading. Bus dollar student buys supercar with pocket change. I had owned the car for 11 minutes when I got pulled over. The officer walked up, asked for my license, recognized me, and looked exhausted. Please tell me you didn't buy this today. I bought it 20 minutes ago. With coins? Yes. He closed his eyes. You people are making my shift very weird. I asked why he stopped me. He said I had no license plate. I pointed out that the dealer plate was in the rear window. He checked. It was. Then he admitted he mostly wanted to see whether the story was real. He let me go with a warning to stop causing financial emergencies. I promised nothing. When I reached my apartment, there were 6 news vans outside. I kept driving. My phone had 412 missed calls. Some were from banks. Some were from investors. One was from my landlord. I answered that one because old habits die slowly. He sounded nervous. Jin, I just wanted to let you know your rent has been adjusted. I braced myself. How much? $0.0014 per month. I almost laughed. My old monthly rent had been $1,400. Now it was 14 ten-thousandths of a dollar. Then he added, also, I saw the news. I knew what was coming. He asked whether I wanted to buy the building. I asked how much. 48 cents. I looked at Eli. Eli looked at me. I mouthed, Do I buy my apartment building? He mouthed back, obviously. I told my landlord I would think about it. He immediately lowered the price to 42 cents. That was my second discovery about sudden wealth. The moment people think you can buy anything, everyone starts trying to sell you everything. By noon, I had received offers to buy 17 apartment buildings, 3 restaurants, a regional airline, a bowling alley, 2 mobile game studios, 1 alpaca farm, and something described only as a strategic mayonnaise asset. I did not know what a strategic mayonnaise asset was. I still do not. Eli wanted me to buy it immediately. I refused on principle. The problem was that going home had become impossible. Reporters had found my address. The parking lot was full. One man wearing a suit was standing on the roof of his car holding a sign that said he had a once-in-a-lifetime lithium opportunity. I drove past twice, then parked behind a laundromat 3 blocks away. The owner saw the supercar and tried to sell me the laundromat for $0.01. I told him I only needed a parking spot. He gave me the entire back row for free. Eli leaned against the car and stared at me. You realize you can't keep living like this, right? What does that mean? You're carrying more liquid purchasing power in that wallet than most private companies now have in their treasury accounts. That sentence makes my head hurt. So did the mayonnaise asset. But you rejected greatness. My phone rang again. This time, it was my bank. A different woman introduced herself as Celeste Ward, Director of Private Wealth Operations. I had never spoken to a director of anything unless you counted the Student Film Club. Celeste informed me that the bank's executive committee was requesting a meeting as soon as possible. I asked whether I was in trouble. She said, quite the opposite. That made me more nervous. The bank sent a car. I told them I already had one. They sent a security convoy anyway. 5 black sedans appeared around the corner like I had joined a presidential motorcade by accident. Eli looked at them, then at my silver supercar. Drive in the middle, he said. Why? Because this is the coolest thing that will ever happen to us. He was right. We drove downtown surrounded by bank security while I wore a $20 hoodie and had cereal dust on my jeans. The bank headquarters had closed its front entrance to normal customers. A red carpet was waiting. I refused to walk on it. The carpet was longer than my apartment. Inside, 12 executives stood in a line. One of them was the same type of person who 2 weeks earlier had probably approved the policy charging me a $12 overdraft fee for being 38 cents short. Now they were bowing slightly when I walked past. I enjoyed that more than I should have. They brought me to a conference room on the top floor. There was sparkling water in glass bottles, pastries arranged like gemstones, and a screen displaying my account balance in giant numbers, $326.83. I panicked. Wait, where did 31 cents go? Everyone stared at me. Then I remembered the supercar. Oh, right. Eli put his face in his hands. Celeste explained the situation. The bank had never designed systems for a retail customer with this kind of relative liquidity. My balance represented an absurd concentration of spendable wealth. Their models showed that if I tried to move even $10 at once, I could distort several regional markets simply because almost nobody used amounts that large anymore. I asked what that meant in normal words. A gray-haired executive cleared his throat. It means, Mr. Park, that if you accidentally type $10 instead of $0, you could create a very confusing afternoon. That I understood. They had built me a special banking interface with 9 decimal places, transaction warnings, and a giant confirmation screen whenever I attempted to spend more than 1 cent. Then Celeste handed me a black metal card. It was heavier than my old phone. No preset spending limit, she said. I looked at her. Yesterday, this bank declined me at a gas station because I tried to spend $42. The executives became fascinated by the table. Celeste changed the subject. She said my account was still under review because nobody understood why I had been exempted from the shift. Every ledger from the previous night showed my money passing through the normalization process, reaching the step where balances were divided by 1 million and then being skipped. Not corrected, not reversed. Skipped. A system log contained 2 words next to my account, preserve nominal. I asked who had issued the command. Nobody knew. Eli immediately whispered, chosen one. I kicked him under the table. Celeste continued. My cash was not the only strange thing. The bank had reviewed my safe deposit declarations, insurance records, student housing inventory, and registered personal assets. Everything specifically assigned to me before midnight had also been preserved in nominal value. I frowned. What does that mean? She turned the screen toward me. My laptop, which I had bought used for $620, had not been automatically revalued to $0 in my asset records. My bicycle, worth maybe maybe $90 still showed $90. My cheap digital camera still showed $180. The microwave I bought from a graduating senior for $25 was still listed at $25. Even a refundable library deposit I paid months earlier had somehow remained $30. Eli stared at me like I had discovered infinite money. Your microwave is richer than me. I told him that was not helpful. The assets were not necessarily sellable for those amounts. Nobody would pay $90 for a used bicycle in a world where new cars cost cents. But legally and electronically, anything that had been clearly tagged as mine before the shift had retained its old denomination. That was weird. Then Celeste showed me something weirder. My student meal plan had $71.40 remaining yesterday. It still had $71.40. My campus printing credit had $8.25. Still $8.25. My arcade card from a pizza place had $12 in stored value. Still $12. My laundromat card had $4.75. Still $4.75. I stared at the screen. I have more money trapped on a pizza arcade card than most CEOs make in a lifetime now. Yes, Celeste said. I nodded slowly. I hate this timeline. Eli leaned forward. I love this timeline. The executives wanted me to do 3 things. First, stop carrying physical dollars around. Second, avoid public purchases over 10 cents until markets stabilized. Third, appoint professional advisors before people tricked me into buying junk. I glanced at Eli. He looked offended. I have advised him against many terrible purchases. I reminded him about the mayonnaise asset. That was different. That had vision. Celeste slid a list of wealth managers toward me. I slid it back. I had known these people for 30 minutes. Yesterday, none of them would have returned my email. I was not handing them control of $326 just because the decimal point had moved for everybody else. I'll hire people, I said, but I'm choosing them. Celeste smiled slightly. That was when I noticed she seemed more amused than the other executives. Good answer, she said. Then the conference room door burst open. A young assistant rushed in and whispered into the chairman's ear. The chairman's face changed. He looked at me. Mr. Park, did you authorize a purchase of 12 city buses? I almost fell out of my chair. No. He turned the tablet around. There was a transaction in my name. $2.04. 12 buses. I stared at it. Then I realized exactly what had happened. The $1 fare payment from that morning had been too large for the transit system to process normally. The system had classified it as a deposit. Mr. Han had kept the physical bill, but the transit authority had simultaneously credited a $1 digital receivable to my name while trying to resolve the overpayment. Their automated procurement software had then seen an account with excess credit and a standing public auction for decommissioned buses. Some broken government workflow had bid my credit automatically. And because the other bidders were using new scale money, my accidental minimum bid was enormous. I had won 12 buses without knowing the auction existed. Eli stood up so quickly his chair rolled backward. I knew the bus thing was destiny. I asked the chairman how I could undo it. He said the auction was final. I asked if I could return the buses. He said technically yes, but there would be a restocking fee. How much? $0.0003. I stared at him. Fine. Eli grabbed my arm. No. Jin, think. I am thinking. No, you're using old poor person thinking. You own 12 buses. That is a problem. That is public transportation. I hated that he had a point. We left the bank with a digital folder containing 12 vehicle titles. I had no drivers, no depot, no route permits, and no reason to own a bus company. So naturally, by 1:30 p.m., I owned a bus company. I bought a small private transit operator that already had drivers, insurance, maintenance facilities, and city permits. Price $0.04. The owner accepted my offer in 11 seconds. He also tried to sell me his vacation house. I declined. I moved my 12 buses into the company and renamed one route the Dollar Line because Eli would not stop suggesting it. Then I made all rides free for students for the rest of the semester. That cost the company less than the amount of money I used to lose in couch cushions. The internet went insane. People called it generous. It was not generous. It was mostly me trying to get rid of 12 accidental buses without looking stupid. Unfortunately, doing something accidentally nice is still nice, so the story became even bigger. By 2 o'clock, the bus video had 30 million views. By 2:15, Somebody made a remix of Mr. Han saying a whole $1 over dramatic orchestra music. By 2:30, a company started selling shirts with my face on them. I tried to sue them in my head, then realized the shirts cost $0 and I could probably just buy the company. That thought scared me, so I did the most normal thing I could think of. I went back to campus for lunch. This turned out to be a terrible idea. The student center looked like a stock exchange operated by raccoons. Everyone was trying to understand the new pricing system. The cafeteria had taped extra zeros over every menu board. The bookstore was refusing cash entirely. A vending machine had been unplugged after someone inserted a dime and received 20,000 bottles of soda as store credit. The line for financial aid stretched down the hallway. Student loans had been divided by 1 million, which sounded amazing until everyone realized their wages had been divided too. Technically, nothing had improved for them. Then I walked in. The hallway got quiet. I was starting to hate hallways. A girl I knew from statistics class, Mina Seo, stepped out of line and walked straight toward me. Mina was one of those people who always had 5 colored pens, 3 backup plans, and a facial expression that suggested everyone around her was wasting oxygen inefficiently. She looked at me. "Is your bank balance really unchanged?" "Apparently." "How much?" $326 and change. She closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them, she looked angry, not jealous. Angry. You cannot walk around saying that out loud. I thought we were whispering. We are standing under 3 security cameras and beside a journalism major. The journalism major slowly lowered his phone. Mina grabbed my sleeve and pulled me into an empty study room. Eli followed. She locked the door. Then she spent 5 minutes explaining everything I had already begun to understand. To normal people, my balance did not look like $327 anymore. It looked like hundreds of millions of dollars in yesterday's purchasing power. But worse, it was liquid. Many corporations were still valuable on paper, but their ownership structures were frozen. Settlement systems were unstable, and normal investors were being cautious. I had clean, spendable, unchanged currency that made me less like a rich student and more like a walking central bank with bad hair. Eli raised a finger. "His hair is fine." Mina ignored him. She asked what I had bought so far. I listed the supercar. She stared at me. I listed the transit company. She stared harder. I explained the 12 buses were an accident. She turned to Eli. "Were you supervising him?" Eli looked personally insulted. "I was inspiring him." "That is worse." Mina was the student council treasurer. She had spent the morning helping the university convert budgets to micro units. She understood the chaos better than I did, so I offered her a job. She asked what kind. I said stopping me from accidentally buying dumb things. Eli objected. Mina asked the salary. I had no idea what a normal salary was anymore. She told me her campus job, previously paying $15 an hour, now paid $0 per hour. I offered her $0. Her expression did not change, but her eyes widened slightly. "That is double." "Yes, for doing what?" "Following me around and saying no." She thought about it. Then she pointed at Eli. "Does saying no to him count?" "Yes, I accept." Eli called it betrayal. I called it my first good investment. 5 minutes later, my new financial advisor discovered my next disaster. The $1 bus story had caused thousands of people to search my name. That traffic had crashed the website of the tiny tutoring service I ran for extra money. I had forgotten about it completely. I had created the service months earlier to help freshmen with basic math and economics. It was barely a business. I had 3 clients, a spreadsheet, and a website that looked like it had been built during a hostage situation. But the business was legally registered under my name, and because it was my property before midnight, its listed cash balance and prepaid customer credits had not been divided either. Mina opened the account. $18.62. The room became silent. I stared at the screen. My side hustle had more liquid cash than entire mid-size companies now. Eli whispered. "The tutoring empire awakens." I told him to stop naming things. Then the website came back online. In 30 seconds, it received 8,000 booking requests. Nobody wanted tutoring. They wanted to meet me. One request offered me $0 for a 15-minute lesson on how to retain pre-shift currency. I declined it. Another offered to exchange a luxury apartment for 1 hour of consulting. I declined that too. The third was from the CEO of a technology company. He wanted private tutoring in basic arithmetic. I thought it was a joke. It was not. His finance division had spent all morning making mistakes with zeros. He offered to pay $0 per hour. Yesterday, that would have been the equivalent of a $1,000 hourly rate. I looked at Mina. She looked at me. Then she said, "Take the appointment." Why? Because you need to see how powerful people are reacting before they decide what to do about you. That sentence made my lunch feel less fun. Still, she was right, so I accepted. The meeting was scheduled at the company's headquarters at 4. At 3:05, my new bank card arrived by helicopter, not metaphorically. A helicopter landed on the university athletics field because the courier company decided street traffic was too risky for a card linked to my account. The dean called me. He was not happy. I apologized. Then he asked if I had considered donating to the university. I ended the call. At 3:20, the apartment building where I lived went up for sale publicly. My landlord had apparently decided my hesitation meant he should create competition. The starting bid was $0.42. By 3:25, the bid reached $0.44. By 3:30, it hit $0.51. I stopped caring. Then I received an alert saying the highest bidder intended to demolish the building and turn it into a luxury micro-hotel. My lease could be terminated. Old, broke student panic returned instantly. I had spent all morning being told I could buy companies, but the idea of losing my cheap apartment made my stomach tighten. I opened the auction app. Mina saw what I was doing. "Jin, don't overreact." "I'm not overreacting. You just typed $5. I looked at the screen. My thumb hovered over confirm. The current bid was 51 cents. I had entered $5. I deleted it. Mina nodded approvingly. Then Eli leaned over and said, "Enter 52 cents. I did. The other bidder responded with 53. I bid 54. He bid 55. I bid 56. He bid 60. Now I was annoyed. Mina told me not to get emotional. I told her I was calm. She pointed out that I was standing on a chair. I got down. The bidder jumped to 75 cents. A message appeared from the auction service. High value bid detected. Please verify source of funds. I verified. The service called me immediately. The operator asked whether I really intended to bid on the whole property. I said yes. The operator asked whether I understood that 76 cents represented a major transaction. I said yes. The operator asked whether I wanted to use financing. I laughed for 10 seconds. Then I bid 76 cents. The other bidder withdrew. I won the building. Total purchase price after fees, $0.76. I had spent less than $1 to become my own landlord. The first thing I did as owner was reduce my own rent to $0. The second thing I did was reduce everyone else's rent by 10% because I was already embarrassed about the helicopter. The third thing I did was discover that owning an apartment building meant people called you when the laundry machine broke. I received my first maintenance complaint 7 minutes after closing. Power had changed nothing. A dryer was still a dryer. I hired a property manager. Mina approved. Eli said we should replace the laundry room with an arcade. Mina denied him before I could answer. This arrangement was already working. At 4, we arrived at the technology company. Their headquarters was a glass tower downtown, 48 floors tall, full of employees who looked like they had not slept since midnight. The CEO, Adrian Cole, met us personally in the lobby. Yesterday, Adrian Cole had been worth several $billion. Today, after the shift, his personal liquid accounts totaled about $3,900. That still made him vastly wealthier than almost everyone. But for some reason, he looked at my $325 and treated me like a dangerous animal. That was when Mina whispered the fact I had completely missed. Net worth and liquid cash were different. Adrian still owned huge pieces of his company. The company still had enormous productive value, but the price of everything had divided by 1 million, and so had the nominal value of his shares. My $325 was not richer than every billionaire on Earth, but it was abnormal. It was outside the new scale, and because I could deploy it instantly, I could compete for assets at values no normal buyer would casually match. Adrian brought us upstairs. The tutoring request turned out to be real, but only technically. He did want help understanding one equation. The equation was how much of his company I could buy. He displayed the current share price. Then he displayed my balance. Then he smiled the way people smile before trying to sell you something. I think we can help each other. I knew immediately that economics tutoring had become weird forever. Adrian Cole did not waste time pretending he cared about tutoring. He brought up a chart showing his company, Valora Systems, before and after the Great Decimal Shift. Yesterday, Valora had been valued at roughly $6.80 billion. This morning, the same company had opened at a market value of around $6,800. Same engineers, same servers, same patents, same weird office chairs that looked like they had been designed by spiders. Only the numbers had changed. Adrian owned enough shares that he was still enormously wealthy compared with regular people. But every executive in the world had the same new problem. Their fortunes were mostly trapped in assets. I had hundreds of dollars in pure cash. Adrian tapped my account balance on the screen. You could become our largest outside shareholder before dinner. I looked at Mina. She did not say no. That worried me more than if she had. I asked Adrian why he wanted my money when his company was still functioning. He smiled. Because every payment network on Earth is choking on decimal places. That part was obvious even to me. People had spent the whole morning failing to buy coffee because old software could not handle prices like $0. Stores were rounding. Banks were imposing temporary minimums. Payroll systems were treating annual salaries of 4 cents as errors. Valora owned a digital wallet platform used by millions of people. If they could update it first, they could become the default way the new economy moved tiny amounts. They needed emergency capital for servers, development, compliance, and a terrifying amount of overtime pizza. How much? I asked. Adrian leaned back. $5. Eli coughed like someone had punched him. Even Mina's eyebrows moved. $5 no longer sounded like $5. It sounded like $5 million wearing a tiny hat. Adrian offered me a serious equity stake in exchange. I looked at the contract. Then I looked at the company's app on my phone. It currently had a minimum payment of 1 cent. I had a better idea. I'll invest $3, I said, if you build a payment mode specifically for amounts below 1 cent and make it available to everyone for free. Adrian frowned. Free? No transfer fees under 1 cent for 6 months. That would cost us money. You just asked me for $5. He stared at me. I had never negotiated a corporate investment in my life. My biggest negotiation before that day had been getting a seller online to knock $8 off a used desk. So I used the same strategy. I stayed quiet and acted like I could walk away. It worked much better when I was accidentally one of the most liquid people on Earth. Adrian countered with 3 months. Mina leaned toward me and whispered that we should demand 9 decimal precision, offline transaction support, and customizable safety limits. I repeated all of that like I had thought of it. Adrian agreed. Then I added one more condition. The button that activated ultra-small payments had to be called normal mode, not rich mode, not whale mode, not sovereign mode, normal mode. I was tired of every machine reacting to my account like I was launching a missile. Adrian laughed and agreed. We shook hands. My bank declined the $3 transfer instantly. The entire executive team froze. I checked my phone. A red warning filled the screen. Transaction blocked. National Monetary Review in progress. I refreshed. My account still showed $325 and change, but every transfer function was disabled. Celeste called me less than 10 seconds later. Her voice was calm in the way people sound when the building is on fire, but they do not want the customers to notice. A federal emergency task force had placed a temporary hold on my preserved balance. Not because I had done anything illegal, because no one knew whether my money was legal in the first place. The Great Decimal Shift had rewritten every official monetary ledger on Earth except mine. Regulators wanted to inspect the exception before I invested $3 and accidentally became a material shareholder in a technology company before dinner. I asked how long the hold would last. Celeste said she did not know. Adrian heard that. The room changed instantly. The warm smiles became careful smiles. The investment documents slid half an inch farther away from me. I recognized the look. It was the same look landlords gave me when I said I was a student. For 12 glorious hours, I had forgotten what it felt like to be considered financially suspicious. Now I was back, except I owned a supercar. Adrian apologized and said we could continue when the hold was lifted. I stood up. Then Mina grabbed my sleeve. Your main personal account is frozen, she said quietly. Yes, your tutoring company is a separate legal account. I stopped. Eli slowly smiled. I opened my tutoring business app. $18.62. Available. Adrian stared at the balance. The chief financial officer sat down without being asked. I tried the transfer again from the business account. Blocked. A second red message appeared. Related entity review initiated. Mina sighed. They are watching in real time. Eli leaned over my shoulder. What about your meal plan? I cannot invest in a software company using cafeteria credit. You don't know until you try. Mina told him that was the worst sentence she had heard all day. My phone buzzed again. This time the laundromat card app had been frozen too. Then my campus printing balance. Then my pizza arcade account. The task force was moving through my financial life like an accountant playing whack-a-mole. I expected them to freeze the cash in my wallet next. They could not. I reached into my pocket. $3 in bills, a few coins, and the dangerous little nickel I had forgotten to remove after buying the car. The room watched my hand. I pulled out a 5-cent coin. Adrian actually flinched. I put it on the conference table. This is legal tender, right? The chief financial officer looked like I had placed a meteorite in front of him. Technically, Can a corporation accept a cash investment? Technically. Can you issue me shares for 5 cents? He stared at Adrian. Adrian stared at the coin. 5 cents was nowhere near the $3 investment we had discussed, but in the new economy it still represented the equivalent of 50,000 old dollars. More importantly, it proved I was not completely frozen. Adrian started laughing. Fine, he said. 5 cents now. The rest after review. We'll structure it as a convertible bridge note. I had no idea what that meant. Mina did. She read the documents. I signed. The chief financial officer personally carried my nickel downstairs in a sealed evidence pouch because their cash vault procedures had no category for coin worth more than employee payroll. By the time I left Valora, I owned a very small piece of a multi-billion-dollar technology company because I found loose change in my pocket. That sentence would never become normal. Outside, 3 black government vehicles were waiting. A woman stepped out wearing a gray suit, and the expression of someone who had already read every stupid thing I had done that day. She introduced herself as Evelyn Shaw from the Temporary Monetary Continuity Office. That sounded like a government department created at 2:00 a.m. because it was. She asked me to come with her for an interview. I looked at Mina. Mina asked whether I was being detained. Evelyn said no. Eli asked whether the government building had snacks. Evelyn ignored him. I agreed. The office was operating out of a hotel conference center because the actual agencies responsible for money were too busy screaming at printers. Every room had whiteboards covered in zeros. People ran through hallways carrying laptops and coffee. One sign pointed left for currency stability. Another pointed right for coin incidents. There were apparently enough coin incidents to require a room. Evelyn brought me into a small interview space. She placed a printed screenshot of my bank account on the table. Mr. Park, do you know why your assets were not redenominated? No. Did you alter any banking software? I can barely make my printer connect to Wi-Fi. Did anyone contact you before midnight? No. Did you receive any unusual message, device alert, package, call, dream, symbol, token, or notification? I stared at her. Dream? We are being thorough. I thought back. I had dreamed that my economics professor was chasing me through a grocery store while throwing calculators. I decided that was probably unrelated. Evelyn went through everything. My bank account, my cash, my tutoring service, my meal plan, my printing credits, my bicycle, my apartment deposit, even the $2.17 reward balance on an old food delivery app. Every single item attached specifically to my identity had been preserved. Not just money, value. That was the pattern. The shift had divided the world by 1 million, but wherever the system encountered something already recorded as mine, it had left the number alone. Evelyn showed me a line from the global settlement log. My name appeared beside a string of code nobody could explain. Exclusion class. Beneficiary retention. Beneficiary, Jin Park. I read it twice. Beneficiary of what? That, Evelyn said, is why 43 government agencies would like to speak with you. Eli raised his hand. Can he pick the funniest 43? Evelyn finally looked at him. No. Mina asked the real question. Could the government simply divide my money by 1 million now? Evelyn said technically yes. My stomach dropped. Then she continued. But doing so would require legally classifying the original preservation as an error, and nobody had evidence that it was. The system had not glitched. It had followed an instruction authenticated at a level higher than any bank, central bank, or national treasury could identify. That was the first part of the day that stopped being funny, for about 8 seconds. Then Eli whispered, "Maybe God likes broke college students." Evelyn pinched the bridge of her nose. The task force decided to keep my digital accounts frozen until the next morning while they checked for fraud and systemic risk. I protested. Evelyn reminded me that I had already bought a supercar, 12 buses, a transit company, and an apartment building before dinner. I admitted her concern was not completely unreasonable. Then she gave me a temporary spending license. I thought she was joking. She was not. For the next 18 hours, I could spend up to $0.10 in physical currency for ordinary personal needs. Any purchase above that had to be reported. I stared at the document. You are giving me a legal allowance? Yes. I am 20 years old. Yes. My government has put me on 10 cents of pocket money. Yes. Eli started laughing so hard he had to leave the room. I signed. The news found out before I reached the elevator. Dollar student temporarily limited to 10-cent spending allowance. My life had become a sitcom written by accountants. The moment we stepped outside, a camera crew surrounded us. People shouted questions. Was I secretly a billionaire before the shift? No. Did I hack the banks? No. Was I going to buy the university? I had not decided. Was the silver supercar mine? Unfortunately, yes, and I still could not park it. Then someone shouted the worst question. What do you plan to do with your 10-cent allowance? Eli leaned toward the microphones before I could stop him. We're going shopping. The clip went viral immediately. I wanted to throw him into traffic. Instead, we went shopping. Not because I wanted to, because my phone battery was at 12% and I needed a charger. The electronics store had a charger for $0. I used one of Valora's internal test builds for the new 9-decimal wallet. The transaction went through perfectly. No gasps. No manager offering me the building. Just a tiny electronic chime. I nearly cried. Then the cashier recognized me and asked for a selfie. So much for normal. Valora pushed the update publicly at 7:00 p.m. They called the feature normal mode exactly as promised. Within an hour, 20 million people downloaded it. Cafes started accepting exact payments again. Buses stopped rejecting fares. Online stores reopened. One news anchor called the feature the Jin Park Decimal Patch. I had contributed almost nothing besides a nickel and a demand for more zeros. But the internet gave me credit anyway. This created a new problem. Everyone wanted a piece of me. My inbox filled with investment proposals. One company wanted $0.08 to build underwater luxury apartments. Another wanted $0.03 to make smart socks. A man claiming to be a scientist requested $0.17 for a machine that could teach dogs tax law. Ely wanted to fund that one. Mina blocked his access to my email. Then we saw the scam. An account using my name had started selling something called Jin coins. The fake advertisement claimed each digital token was backed by 1/1,000,000th of my original dollar and guaranteed to become more valuable because I was the chosen holder of full-scale money. 10,000 people had already bought them. I was furious, not because they used my face. They had used my worst student ID photo. My hair looked like I had been electrocuted. That made it personal. Mina traced the company registration. The seller was operating out of a luxury penthouse downtown. Eli grinned. Road trip. I reminded him it was 6 blocks away. Luxury road trip. We took the supercar. I parked across 3 spaces. I was getting worse. The penthouse belonged to Damien Cho. I knew Damien. Everyone on campus knew Damien. He was the type of student who wore designer sunglasses indoors and once complained that the university parking garage did not have a section specifically for imported cars. Before the shift, his family had been rich, very rich. His father owned a chain of luxury hotels. Damien drove a bright red performance coupe and spoke about money the way normal people spoke about weather. After the shift, his family was still rich in relative terms, but their wealth had been redenominated normally. Damien hated that my pathetic student account had somehow skipped the process. When we entered the penthouse, he was hosting a party. Of course he was. The room was packed with influencers, finance people, campus celebrities, and at least one guy wearing a cape for no reason. A giant screen displayed a fake portrait of me standing on a mountain of $1 bills. I walked in wearing the same hoodie from that morning. The music stopped. Damien smiled. Jin Park. I pointed at the screen. Take that down. He spread his hands. It is satire. You're selling fake coins with my face. It is a community currency inspired by your story. It says guaranteed by Jin Park. Inspired by your guarantee of possibility. Even Eli whispered, that is incredibly stupid. Damien's business model was simple. The world had gone insane. People were looking for symbols, and my preserved dollars had become mythology before sunset. He was selling that mythology. Legally, Mina said the token terms were written carefully enough that shutting him down could take time. Damien knew it too, so he proposed a public challenge. He had scheduled a charity auction at the penthouse that night. The centerpiece was supposedly one of the last pre-shift whole dollars still in private circulation. He claimed it came from an anonymous collector. If I could prove it was fake, he would shut down Jin coins and refund every buyer. If I could not, I had to publicly endorse the token project. I asked why I would agree to that. He pointed outside. Hundreds of people were watching the live stream. If I walked away, he would spend the next week telling everyone I was afraid. Mina told me not to play his game. She was right. So naturally, I played his game. The auction began at 8. The alleged pre-shift dollar sat under glass on a velvet platform. People treated it like a royal jewel. The opening bid was $0. Within seconds, it reached $0.02, then $0.05, then $0.11. That was already beyond my temporary spending allowance, so I could not bid even if I wanted to. I did not need to. I had seen a real whole dollar that morning. More importantly, I knew who had it. I called Mr. Han. The bus driver answered on the first ring. His life had also become ridiculous. After I handed him the dollar, financial advisors had camped outside his apartment. Banks offered private accounts. Collectors offered fractions of a cent just to photograph the bill. Mr. Han had spent the day refusing everyone because he still had an afternoon route to drive. I asked him to send me a close photo of the serial number. He did. Then I asked if he remembered anything special about the bill. He said yes. There was a tiny blue ink mark near the lower edge. I remembered it too. The bill came from the laundromat. The owner used a blue pen to mark bills he had checked. I walked up to Damien's display case. The auctioneer protested. I asked them to zoom the camera onto the serial number. The number matched the one in a photo Damien had posted earlier that afternoon when advertising the auction. Then I held up Mr. Han's live video call. On screen, he held the real bill. Same serial number. Tiny blue mark. Damien's bill had no mark. It was a high-quality printed copy. The room erupted. Damien went pale. Eli started clapping like we were at a sports game. Mina smiled, which was somehow more intimidating than yelling. Damien claimed he had been deceived by the anonymous collector. Maybe he had. Maybe he had not. I did not care. He shut down Jin coins on the live stream and promised refunds. Then something unexpected happened. Mr. Han, still on video, looked at the room full of people bidding fractions of dollars for a piece of paper I had used on a bus. He started laughing. "I don't want this thing," he said. I understood. That $1 bill had turned his apartment into a tourist attraction. So he asked me what he should do with it. Every camera pointed at me. I could have told him to deposit it. That would make him insanely wealthy. I could have told him to sell it. Collectors were already offering extra because it was the famous bus dollar. Instead, I told him to spend it on something stupid. Mr. Han thought for a moment. Then he smiled. The next morning, he bought the private bus company I had purchased the day before from me for exactly $1. I had paid $0.04 for it. Mr. Han insisted on paying a full dollar because, in his words, "I want the change problem to be yours now." I tried to refuse. He would not let me. So I sold him the company, gave him the 12 buses too, and watched the internet explode for the third time. The bus driver who received my accidental $1 fare became the owner of a transit company using that same dollar. Then the $1 bill came back to me. I stared at it in my hand. Eli stared at it. Mina stared at it. We had somehow completed a financial circle so stupid that Professor Ellis later called it economically offensive. And because I had bought the transit company for 47 thousandths of a dollar and sold it for $1, I had made a profit of more than 20 times my purchase price in less than a day. My temporary government allowance had not stopped me from becoming richer. It had made me creative. That was when Evelyn Shaw called again. She sounded tired. "Mr. Park, did you just sell a transportation company for $1? "Yes." "And receive physical cash?" "Yes." There was a long silence. "Please come back to the office." I looked at the party, the cameras, the fake dollar under glass, and the real dollar in my hand. "Am I in trouble?" "No," she said. "But the economists are fighting." I sighed. About me? Mostly. I had known wealth for less than 24 hours, and somehow my biggest expense was becoming other people's aspirin. When I returned to the temporary monetary continuity office, the economists were not literally fighting. They were doing something worse. They were arguing politely around a whiteboard. One group believed my $1 sale proved I could create legacy-scale liquidity through ordinary business transactions. Another group believed that was nonsense because Mr. Han had already possessed the dollar after I gave it to him. A third group believed the entire discussion was meaningless because physical currency should have been recalled at sunrise. The man from that third group had apparently spent 6 hours trying to convince the public to surrender their pennies. Nobody liked him. Evelyn placed my returned dollar inside a clear evidence sleeve. I immediately objected. "That is mine. We are not confiscating it. You put it in a bag. It is a protective sleeve. It has a barcode. That is for inventory. You inventoried my dollar." Evelyn stared at me. I decided to stop. The task force had discovered something important while I was at Damien's fake money party. My exemption could not be removed through ordinary financial authority. They had tried a test on my frozen food delivery reward balance. Not to steal it, just to see whether the system would allow them to apply the same 1,000,000 to 1 conversion used on everyone else. The moment they attempted it, the settlement network rejected the command. Not with an error, with a permission denial. Authority insufficient. They escalated. Same result. They used the highest emergency clearance available to the Central Monetary Network. Same result. Authority insufficient. At that point, someone apparently unplugged a test computer and went for a walk. Evelyn showed me the rejection code. I understood none of it. Mina understood slightly more. What authority would be sufficient? She asked. Evelyn folded her arms. That is the problem. The system does not say. I leaned back. So my money is legally untouchable? No. Technically untouchable? No. Computer says no? Evelyn sighed. Yes, that was good enough for me. They lifted the freeze. In exchange, I agreed to a temporary reporting rule for any single transaction above $10 and a soft warning for anything above $1. The 10-cent allowance disappeared. I celebrated by buying a vending machine snack for $0. The machine gave me 2 bags by mistake. I considered that a victory against the system. Then Evelyn gave me one final warning. My existence was attracting attention. Not dangerous attention exactly. Mostly annoying attention. Banks wanted me as a client. Companies wanted me as an investor. Researchers wanted blood samples. Economists wanted interviews. Lifestyle influencers wanted to film me opening my refrigerator. One reality show had already offered to build a mansion for me and hide 20 broke students inside it. I declined before Evelyn finished the sentence. Mina suggested I create a formal company to hold new investments and filter requests. That made sense. Ely suggested calling it $1 Empire. Mina said no. He suggested full dollar holdings. No. Decimal Destroyer Group. No. Financial Services. I nearly fired him despite never hiring him. We settled on Park Holdings because it sounded boring enough that people might leave me alone. They did not. By 9 o'clock the next morning, Park Holdings had received 61,000 emails. Mina built a filter. Anything containing the words guaranteed, crypto, revolutionary beverage, moonland, or dog tax lawyer went directly into a folder called Absolutely Not. Eli found the folder and renamed it Maybe. Mina changed his password. I slept 3 hours that night in a hotel because reporters were still outside my apartment building. The hotel suite cost $0. I paid exactly through normal mode. No one fainted. Progress. At 8:02 a.m., my phone rang. Professor Ellis. I answered because I had missed class again. He sounded strangely formal. Mr. Park, are you aware that Westbridge University is currently in an acquisition dispute? I sat up. No. Are you aware that your name is involved? I sat up more. No. Then perhaps you should come to campus. I arrived 20 minutes later in the supercar. A campus security officer had reserved a space for me using orange cones. I was offended. Then I saw how badly I had parked the day before and accepted that society was protecting itself. The university administration building was packed. Students crowded the steps. Faculty members stood around checking phones. Someone had printed signs saying, "Keep Westbridge weird," which confused me because Westbridge had never been particularly weird until I paid $1 for a bus. Mina met me at the entrance. She had already read the documents. A private education company called Apex Collegiate had offered to buy the operating corporation that managed Westbridge. The university's endowment, research trusts, scholarships, and land arrangements were complicated and mostly protected. But the company handling housing, dining, campus services, and several academic buildings was a separate entity. That was the one Professor Ellis had said was worth around $0.86 after the shift. Apex had offered $0.92. Normally, nobody would care who owned the service corporation, except Apex's leaked plan was ridiculous. They wanted to convert 2 residence halls into luxury executive housing, replace the student gym with a membership club, raise parking rates, and install something called premium hallway access. I did not know how a hallway became premium. Apparently it involved nicer lighting and a monthly subscription. That offended me more than anything else. The university board had until noon to accept or reject. They wanted alternatives. Students were protesting. Faculty were furious. And because my name had become synonymous with irresponsible amounts of small-looking money, everyone assumed I would ride in and save the campus with $1. I hated that expectation. So I walked into the board meeting planning to say no. Then I met Apex's representative. His name was Conrad Pike. He wore a silver suit, silver tie, silver watch, and a smile that looked rented. He shook my hand and said, the bus student. I immediately disliked him. He explained that Apex had sophisticated plans for Westbridge. He used phrases like monetizing underutilized walking zones. I asked what that meant. He said students might pay a tiny convenience fee for faster pathways between buildings. So you want to charge people for walking? Only premium walking. Eli whispered, "Buy him." Mina whispered, You cannot buy a person. Eli looked disappointed. Conrad also planned to replace the cheap cafeteria with curated nutritional experiences. That meant smaller sandwiches for more money. I had been a broke student for too long to allow that. I sat at the board table. The chairwoman asked whether Park Holdings intended to submit a competing offer. I looked at Mina. She had calculated everything. The service corporation had debts, payroll, maintenance obligations, and terrible plumbing in 3 dorms. Buying it was not like buying a supercar. I would own actual problems. I asked the board what would happen if I bought it and changed nothing except removing the terrible ideas. They said ownership alone would not give me control over academics. The faculty senate and trustees still handled that, but I would control many campus operations and leases. That sounded perfect. I did not want to run a university. I barely wanted to attend one. Conrad raised Apex's offer to $0.95. I offered $0.95. He smiled and offered $1. The room reacted to the whole dollar threshold like he had fired a cannon. Conrad clearly expected me to back down. I had become famous for $1. But he assumed I was emotionally attached to it. He was right. I did not want to spend a whole $1 on campus administration. So I asked whether the board cared only about price. The chairwoman said no. They could consider terms. That changed everything. Apex wanted to maximize profit. I wanted cheap food, normal hallways, and no 8 a.m. attendance policy. I offered $0.97 with conditions. No premium hallway fees. Dorm rent frozen at current relative levels for 2 years. Student meal prices capped. The gym stayed a gym. The buses Mr. Han now owned got preferred campus access, and any class scheduled before 8:30 a.m. had to provide free coffee. Professor Ellis, sitting in the back, raised his hand. That last item is not an operating company matter. I pointed at him. Then I withdraw it. He nodded. Good. I added free coffee to the campus services budget instead. He looked betrayed. The board recessed. 30 minutes later, they accepted my offer. I owned the company that operated most of my university for 97 cents. The first thing I did was check whether I could cancel my own parking tickets. Mina said no. I had 3. We paid them. Total, $0. I was annoyed on principle. The student crowd outside cheered when the announcement went public. I walked out expecting maybe a few questions. Instead, someone put a plastic crown on my head. I removed it immediately. Then Professor Ellis approached me. For the first time ever, he looked unsure how to address me. Mr. Park. Yes? You now own the company that issues my faculty parking permit. Yes. Do not make this weird. I would never. I made his parking permit number 0000001. He did not speak to me for 2 days. My campus popularity became unbearable. Every club asked for funding. The robotics team wanted $0 for a competition. That was reasonable. The film club wanted $0 to build a rotating spaceship hallway. Less reasonable, but interesting. The medieval club wanted $0 for foam swords. Approved immediately. Then Eli submitted a request for $0.01 to create a student emergency fund reserve. Mina denied it before the form reached me. I was beginning to suspect Mina had become more powerful than I was. By lunchtime, the campus cafeteria had a new problem. My unchanged meal plan balance of $71.40 had leaked online. Students were standing around the scanner waiting to see what happened when I bought food. I ordered noodles. Price $0. I tapped my student card. The screen flashed. Balance remaining $71.39. The cashier stared at it. Then the cafeteria's old accounting software crashed. Every register rebooted. I had shut down lunch by buying noodles. The line behind me groaned. I felt 80 people glare at the back of my head, so I did what any responsible owner would do. I climbed onto a chair and announced lunch was free until the system came back. The cafeteria erupted in cheers. Mina pulled me down. Do you know how much that costs? No. Approximately $0 for the whole lunch period. I blinked. That's it? Yes. I climbed back onto the chair. Dessert too. Mina let me have that one. That afternoon, Park Holdings moved into its first office. I did not choose it. Eli did. This was a mistake. He found a top-floor luxury penthouse that had been converted into office space after the shift. It had floor-to-ceiling windows, a private elevator, a rooftop garden, a movie room, and a bathroom larger than my old apartment. The monthly rent was $0. Eli looked at me with the confidence of a real estate mogul. I negotiated them down from 47. 47 what? 10 thousandths. I stared at him. He grinned. I am learning. Instead of renting, I bought the entire unit for $0.19. Mina made me read the inspection report first. I had grown. We put 3 desks in a room designed for private parties and called it headquarters. I took the smallest desk because I was used to it. Eli took the desk facing the skyline and immediately ordered a tiny brass nameplate reading Director of Vibes. I refused to reimburse him. He paid $0 himself. By evening, our company had 4 employees. Mina was officially Chief Operations Officer because person who stops Jin did not fit on tax forms. Ely became Community Director because Director of Vibes also did not fit. We hired a lawyer named Priya Nandakumar who had spent the previous 24 hours helping businesses survive decimal errors. And we hired a quiet accountant named Marcus Bell who looked at my financial history for 3 minutes and said, "I need stronger coffee." I trusted him immediately. Marcus gave me the first clear picture of what I actually owned. Cash and preserved balances. Absurd. Supercar. 1. Apartment building. 1. University operating company. 1. Tiny stake in Valora Systems. Technically yes. Transit company. No longer mine. 12 buses. Also Mr. Hand's problem now. My old bicycle. Somehow still listed at $90. Marcus circled the bicycle 3 times. That thing is an accounting crime scene. The preservation rule made asset reports almost useless. My actual bicycle could not command $90 in the new market, but its registered nominal value remained $90. If I insured it, the computer wanted to insure it for $90. If I used it as collateral, some automated systems treated it like a major industrial asset. Marcus warned me not to do that. Ely immediately suggested using the bicycle to secure a hotel loan. Marcus looked at me. Can I fire him? No. Shame. Then our office door opened without anyone knocking. Damien Cho walked in. He was not smiling. Mina reached for her phone. Priya reached for a contract folder. Eli reached for a bowl of chips. I asked Damien what he wanted. He dropped a glossy invitation on my desk. It was for the New Scale Motor Exhibition, a private event being held at a racetrack outside the city. Luxury car companies were desperate for publicity after the shift. Nobody could wrap their heads around supercars costing 30 cents. Collectors were angry. Dealers were confused. Influencers were posting videos titled things like, "I bought a hypercar for less than a burger used to cost." Damien had been invited to a promotional race. So had I. I had ignored the email because Mina's filter probably saw the phrase once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and buried it. Damien wanted me to attend. I asked why. He said the internet had turned me into the face of new money car culture. I told him I did not know what new money car culture was. He said exactly. Then he admitted the real reason. His followers had collapsed after the fake coin embarrassment. He wanted a public rematch. Not with tokens, with cars. A simple track challenge, 5 laps. Winner received a promotional prize from the event sponsor. I asked what prize. Damien smiled. A supercar dealership. I looked at Mina. She said no. I looked at Eli. He said yes. I looked at Marcus. He said please stop acquiring businesses through competitions. I looked at Priya. She had already picked up the invitation. The liability waiver is terrible. That should have ended the discussion. Then Damien added one sentence. Unless you're afraid that car is only impressive when it's parked badly. I accepted. Mina closed her eyes. Eli high-fived me. Marcus walked toward the coffee machine. The race was the next afternoon. I had 22 hours to learn how not to crash a supercar I had owned for 2 days. For once, money could not solve the problem by itself. So I used money to find someone who could. I hired the retired professional driver who had done the dealership's advanced training program. His rate was $0 per hour. I paid for 6 hours. He spent the first 20 minutes watching me drive. Then he got out of the passenger seat and stared at the sky. Who sold you this car? The dealership, sponsoring tomorrow's event. He nodded slowly. They deserve what happens. Training was brutal. Not physically, emotionally. I learned that I braked too late, accelerated too early, turned too sharply, looked at obstacles instead of exits, and gripped the steering wheel like I was trying to strangle it. Every time I made a mistake, Eli filmed it. Mina deleted the videos. By sunset, I could drive a clean lap without terrifying my instructor. By midnight, I could drive a fast lap. By 2:00 a.m., I realized Damien had probably been driving performance cars since high school, and I was still doomed. My instructor agreed. Good, he said. Now stop trying to beat him. I stared at him. That is the race. No, your job is to finish 5 clean laps. His job is to prove he is better than you. Those are different problems. I understood immediately. Damien needed drama. I needed consistency. The next day, the racetrack was packed. The event organizers had leaned completely into the Great Decimal Shift. Signs advertised cars for less than pocket change. One company displayed a $0.64 hypercar inside a glass case surrounded by security guards. The absurdity of protecting a 64-cent car with 6 armed guards was lost on nobody. My race against Damien was scheduled as the final exhibition. He arrived in a red coupe tuned for the track. I used my silver car exactly as it came from the dealership. Damien walked over in a racing suit covered with sponsor logos. I wore a borrowed suit with Park Holdings printed on one sleeve. Ely had tried to add full dollar energy across the back. Mina stopped him. The race started. Damien launched ahead immediately. The crowd roared. I did not chase him. Lap 1, he beat me by 4 seconds. Lap 2, 3 seconds. Lap 3, I stayed exactly on the line my instructor taught me. Damien kept checking his mirrors. That was the difference. I was driving the track. He was driving me. On lap 4, he pushed too hard into a corner, corrected, and lost time. I passed him. The crowd exploded. He came back immediately and passed me on the straight. We entered the final lap almost together. I did not try anything heroic. No impossible drift. No last-second anime boost. I simply kept doing the boring thing correctly. Damien tried to brake later than me. Too late. He ran wide. I took the inside line and crossed the finish first by less than half a second. For 3 seconds I could not hear anything except my own breathing. Then the grandstands erupted. I climbed out of the car shaking. Damien parked beside me. He removed his helmet. I expected anger. Instead, he started laughing. "You drive like an accountant." I pointed toward Marcus in the stands. "He has influenced me." The event sponsor presented the prize. I had assumed a supercar dealership meant some promotional ownership share. No, it was the actual dealership where I had bought my silver car. The owners were restructuring after the shift and had donated a controlling stake to the event for publicity. I stood on the podium holding a giant ceremonial key to a business I did not want. Marcus looked ready to resign. Mina looked ready to murder me. Eli was crying with happiness, and that was how, 3 days after being too broke to afford breakfast comfortably, I became the owner of the dealership that sold me my first supercar. My first decision as owner was simple. I banned salespeople from issuing press releases every time I paid with coins. My second decision was even simpler. I gave the salesman who had trusted me with the test drive a promotion. My third decision created another disaster. I announced a student test drive day. Mina stared at me for 5 full seconds. "Do you want the insurance company to die?" I canceled student test drive day. Growth. Owning a supercar dealership sounded glamorous for exactly 41 minutes. Then the marketing department found an old promotion. Before the shift, the dealership had planned a weekend campaign. Buy 1 premium maintenance package and receive $1,000 in accessory credit. After the shift, the maintenance package cost $0. The accessory credit still displayed as $1,000 because the promotion had been stored in a separate advertising database that had not synchronized correctly. At 9:06 the next morning, someone online discovered the mistake. At 9:08, the dealership website had 40,000 visitors. At 9:10, a man attempted to buy a $0 maintenance package and use the $1,000 credit to order every accessory in the warehouse: 3 display cars, the coffee machine, and a leather sofa from the customer lounge. The website accepted. Marcus called me while I was brushing my teeth. "Jin." His voice had the flat tone of a man whose emotional range had been taxed beyond capacity. "Yes? Did you authorize a $1,000 promotional credit?" "No." "Good. Why?" "We have sold the showroom couch." I stopped brushing. "What?" "Technically, we have sold it 412 times." I was in the office 12 minutes later. Mina had already paused the dealership website. Priya was reading consumer protection rules. Ely had opened the promotion page and was laughing so hard he could not breathe. The claims totaled over $38 million in old nominal promotional credits. In the new economy, it was nonsense beyond measurement. We could cancel the promotion because it was an obvious software error, but that would make thousands of customers angry and turn my first week as dealership owner into a public relations fire. I asked what people actually wanted. Mina looked at the orders. Mostly free accessories, free merchandise, and a chance to drive expensive cars. Very few people genuinely believed they were going to receive $1,000 modern dollars. They were having fun exploiting a ridiculous glitch. I understood that instinct personally. So instead of canceling everything, we converted each invalid $1,000 credit into a 1,000,000-point showroom pass. The points had no cash value, but they could be redeemed for track experiences, detailing services, hats, keychains, simulator time, and food at dealership events. events. Anyone who had placed an order during the glitch got the pass free. Priya checked the terms. Legal. Mina checked the cost. Manageable. Eli checked whether the showroom couch was included. It was not. We launched the corrected offer. People loved it. The dealership turned the mistake into a giant weekend event. Hundreds of people came to sit in cars they could suddenly imagine owning. Families used racing simulators. Students took photos. One grandfather spent 40 minutes explaining to me why my silver car needed a different tire pressure. He was right. Sales tripled. I learned another strange lesson. When money becomes weird, people still want the same things. They want fun, food, stories, and the feeling that they got away with something. By the end of the event, the showroom couch had become famous because of the accidental sales orders. Someone offered $0 for it. I refused. It had suffered enough. That evening, Park Holdings received an invitation to an emergency corporate asset exchange called the Decimal Market. The name sounded illegal. It was not. It was basically a massive auction for companies and assets whose owners wanted fast liquidity after the shift. Some businesses were selling small divisions. Some were merging. Some were dumping weird subsidiaries they had forgotten they owned. The event was being held inside a luxury convention hotel, and every wealthy investor in the region seemed to be attending. Mina wanted to go because there might be useful infrastructure assets. Marcus wanted to go because he did not trust me to attend without him. Eli wanted to go because the invitation said buffet. I wanted to go for one reason. A small food company named Hanul Foods was listed for sale. Hanul made the instant noodles I had lived on for most of college. Specifically, they made fire chicken pepper noodles, the red packet with the cartoon chicken on the front. The company had announced that morning it might discontinue the flavor because its packaging supplier had collapsed under decimal conversion problems. I refused to live in a world where I could afford a supercar but not my favorite cheap noodles. So we went. The Decimal Market was the weirdest room I had ever entered. Imagine a luxury auction, a trade show, a startup conference, and a flea market all happening at the same time. One booth was selling a chain of boutique gyms for $0.14. Another offered 23 industrial coffee machines for $0 each. A retired hotel owner had put 3 resorts on a whiteboard like used bicycles. A shipping company was selling naming rights to a cargo vessel for $0. Ely wanted to name it Bodie McDecimal. Denied. The main auction used colored digital paddles linked to verified accounts. To prevent mistakes, every bid above $1 triggered a giant warning sound. I sat between Mina and Marcus. They had both made me promise not to bid on anything except Hanul Foods without discussing it first. I agreed. For 12 minutes, I behaved perfectly. A hotel sold for $0.73. A small video game studio sold for $0.08. A company that made luxury scented candles sold for $0.01 to a man who looked more excited than anyone should look about candles. Then Hanul Foods appeared on the screen. I sat forward. Starting price, $0. I raised my paddle. Someone else bid $0. I bid $0. They bid $0. I bid $0. The other bidder stopped. The auctioneer began the countdown. Then the screen changed. Lot 214 includes bundled subsidiaries. Mina frowned. Marcus leaned forward. I leaned forward too. A list appeared under Hanul Foods. Hanul Foods was apparently owned by a holding company that had been trying to sell several unwanted subsidiaries together. The auction system had grouped them into one lot 5 minutes earlier. My 0.006 of a dollar bid was not just for the noodle company, it was for the opening position on the entire bundle. The bundle included Hanul Foods, a regional grocery chain, a bottled tea brand, a drone delivery startup, a struggling arcade company, a tiny esports organization, a warehouse operator, a frozen dumpling factory, and a company that manufactured inflatable mascots. I stared at the last one. Why inflatable mascots? Marcus whispered. Do not ask questions that may have answers. Mina told me to withdraw. I was about to. Then another bidder raised the price to $0.02. I recognized him. Conrad Pike. Premium hallway man. He smiled at me from across the room. I immediately became irrational. Mina sensed it. Jin, I'm calm. You are holding the paddle with both hands. I lowered it. Conrad bid $0.02. I asked Mina what the bundle was actually worth. She had already pulled the financial data. The subsidiaries were messy but functional. The grocery chain had valuable leases. The warehouse company owned land. The drone startup had decent technology. The noodle company was profitable before the shift. Fair emergency value was maybe $0.40 to $0.60, depending depending on liabilities. I raised to $0.03. Conrad went to $0.05. I went to $0.06. He went to $0.10. The room started paying attention. Someone whispered my name. A camera turned toward us. I hated that everything became a show now. Conrad smiled wider and bid $0.20. Mina whispered, "Still within value." I bid $0.21. Conrad went to $0.30. I bid $0.31. That was when he stopped smiling. He bid $0.40. Marcus inhaled sharply. I asked Mina. She said, "Borderline." I looked at the list again. Noodles, grocery stores, drones, warehouses, arcades, tea, dumplings, inflatable mascots. It was the strangest business portfolio on earth. I loved it. I bid $0.40. Conrad waited. Then he bid $0.50. The room murmured. Mina shook her head. Too high for the bundle as is. That should have been the end. Then I noticed a tiny note beneath the warehouse subsidiary. Property rights included. I asked Marcus to open it. The warehouse company did not merely lease its facilities. It owned them. 7 warehouses on the edge of the city, plus a vacant distribution yard directly beside the airport cargo zone. The land alone was worth more than the current bid. Conrad had seen it too. That was why he was bidding. Now it made sense. I raised to $0.51. He went to $0.60. I went to $0.61. He went to $0.75. I went to $0.75. He glared. I smiled, not because I was confident, because I had finally understood why he wanted it. Conrad jumped to $1. The auction hall sounded the whole dollar warning. A deep gong echoed through the room. Everyone turned. The auctioneer confirmed the bid twice. $1 full, $1 million old dollar equivalent. Conrad leaned back like he had ended the fight. Mina checked the property estimates one more time. Then she whispered, "You can go to $1.40 without being stupid." That was the nicest thing she had said to me all week. I bid $1.01. The gong sounded again. Conrad's face tightened. He bid $1.10. I bid $1.11. He bid $1.20. I bid $1.21. He hesitated, then $1.30. I raised my paddle. $1.30. Conrad looked toward his advisors. They whispered. He lowered his paddle. The auctioneer counted down. Sold. I had come to save a noodle flavor and spent $1.30 buying 9 companies and a suspicious amount of warehouse space. Eli jumped out of his seat. Conglomerate. Marcus put both hands over his face. Mina stared at me. I defended myself immediately. You said $1.40. I did, so this was responsible. She looked at the list of subsidiaries. You own an inflatable mascot manufacturer. Responsible-ish. The auction paperwork took 2 hours. By the end, I had signed my name so many times it stopped looking real. Then the organizers rolled out a celebration cart containing champagne. I asked for soda. They brought a glass bottle that cost $0. I drank it while reading the executive summary of my new corporate empire. Hanul Foods had 38 employees and one major crisis. The grocery chain had 14 stores and a terrible mobile app. The tea company had enough unsold peach tea to fill 3 swimming pools. The drone startup had 260 delivery drones and no major customers. The arcade company had 8 locations and 1 machine that had been dispensing infinite tickets since the shift. The esports team had lost every match that season. The warehouse operator was profitable. The dumpling factory was profitable. The inflatable mascot company was somehow the most profitable subsidiary in the bundle. I stopped making fun of it. The next morning, all 9 management teams arrived at Park Holdings headquarters at once. Our luxury penthouse office had not been designed for 50 stressed executives. People stood in the hallway. Someone used the movie room as a conference space. The frozen dumpling manager conducted a meeting beside the rooftop hot tub. Eli walked around handing out name tags. He gave himself a new one that said Conglomerate Vibes. Mina took it away. I sat at the end of the largest table we could find. Every manager looked at me. They expected a speech. I had never given a corporate speech, so I told them the truth. I bought you because I wanted noodles. Nobody reacted. I continued. That sounded better in my head. Still nothing. I looked at Mina. She made a small circling motion with her finger, meaning continue. So I explained that I did not plan to gut the companies, fire everyone, or turn every building into premium hallway space. That got a few confused looks. Conrad Pike had apparently made similar offers to some of them. I told each manager to identify one immediate problem and one useful thing their company could offer another company in the group. That was it. The meeting transformed. The noodle company needed packaging packaging distribution. The warehouse company had spare packaging storage. The grocery chain needed a faster delivery system. The drone startup needed customers. The arcade company needed cheap food suppliers. The dumpling company needed new retail shelves. The tea company needed somewhere to dump an ocean of peach tea. The esports team needed sponsorship. The mascot company needed nothing. They were thriving for reasons nobody understood. Within an hour, the bundle stopped looking random. We could connect half the businesses immediately. Mina gave me a look that almost counted as approval. Then the noodle manager approached me with bad news. Fire chicken pepper noodles could not be produced. The spice mix supplier had canceled their contract after the shift. The recipe required a specific chili extract from a small manufacturer 300 miles away. I asked how much the supplier company was worth. Mina heard me and said no. I was just asking. You asked with purchase voice. I do not have a purchase voice. Everyone in the room looked at me. Apparently I did. So we did not buy the supplier. Instead, we called them. Their issue was not money. Their shipping partner's billing software could not process freight rates below 1 cent. So they had paused long-distance deliveries. I looked at the drone company. The drone manager looked at the warehouse company. The warehouse manager looked at me. 3 hours later, we had a plan. Our warehouses would consolidate spice shipments. Our drones would handle the final regional leg. Valora's normal mode would process the micropayments. Hanol would get its chili extract. Nobody needed to be acquired. Mina looked genuinely proud. I felt proud too. Then Eli entered the room dragging a 12-foot inflatable chicken. The mascot company had sent it as a welcome gift. It wore sunglasses and held a noodle cup. I stared at it. Eli stared at me. We need this on the roof. Mina said no. I said yes. The chicken went on the roof. For the next week, it became a landmark visible from 6 blocks away. People started giving directions using it. Turn left at the giant noodle chicken. Park Holdings finally had a brand. I hated it. Everyone else loved it. Then the grocery chain launched our first ridiculous product. A 2-minute student meal containing fire chicken pepper noodles, dumplings, and peach tea. We priced it at $0. The marketing team wanted to call it the full dollar feast. I refused. Eli suggested Broke King combo. I almost approved that. Mina suggested Student 9. Boring. The noodle manager, who had said almost nothing all morning, quietly suggested the $327 meal. The room went silent. I stared at him. He looked terrified. I started laughing. We used it. The $327 meal went viral. Students posted videos buying it with tiny payments. Influencers recreated my original broke breakfast. Someone made a challenge where they tried to survive a week on 1 old penny of value. The grocery store sold out. The drones delivered emergency noodle boxes to campuses. The esports team put the giant inflatable chicken in the background of their live streams and, for reasons nobody could explain, won their first 3 matches. Peach tea inventory dropped by 40%. The mascot company received orders from 6 countries. The random bundle I had bought for $1.30 started making money. Not huge money by my preserved standards. Real, new-scale money. That mattered. For the first time since the shift, Park Holdings earned more from ordinary business operations in a day than I spent. Marcus showed me the number with the pride of a parent showing a report card. Profit after expenses, $0, 0.6 of 1 cent. I stared at it. That's good? Marcus looked offended. That is very good. I nodded seriously. Then I remembered I had 9 pennies in a jar at home. Each one was worth more than a day of profits from my new mini conglomerate. I did not say that out loud. Marcus deserved the moment. The internet, however, did not let me stay responsible for long. That night, a leaked photograph appeared from the decimal market. It showed me raising my paddle at $1.30. The caption said, Jin Park spends more than $1 to save instant noodles. It became my most popular image yet. Even Mr. Han texted me. Worth it? I looked at the noodle cup on my desk. The giant inflatable chicken outside the window leaned sideways in the wind like it was waiting for my answer. I texted back. Absolutely. The next morning, my mother called. I had been waiting for this. She lived 2 states away and worked at a dental clinic. She had spent the first 3 days after the shift helping confused patients understand why a cleaning now cost a number with more zeros than a password. Apparently, she had also spent those 3 days watching videos of her son buying companies with bus money. I answered carefully. Hi, Mom. Did you eat breakfast? That was her first question. Not why was my money unchanged. Not why did I own part of a university. Not why was there a giant inflatable chicken on my office roof. Breakfast. Yes. What? Noodles. That is not breakfast. It has an egg. That is noodles with an egg. I looked at the conference room full of people waiting for me to approve a warehouse contract. Nobody spoke. spoke. My mother continued. I saw your car. I swallowed. It was cheap. It is shaped like a headache. That is not a real criticism. You cannot see behind it properly. She was right, which made it worse. Then she asked if I was still attending class. I hesitated. That was enough. Jin, I own the campus operations company. You are still a student. I know. Finish your degree. I know. And buy vegetables. The call ended. Marcus, Mina, Eli, and 3 subsidiary managers had heard everything. Nobody made eye contact. Finally, Eli said, I think she's the real majority shareholder. He was correct. I went to class. Professor Ellis looked surprised to see me. Mr. Park, how nice of the owner of my parking permit to join us. I sat in the back. The lecture topic was post-shift monetary behavior. Halfway through, Professor Ellis displayed a slide with my face on it. I stared at him. He continued without acknowledging me. The slide was titled Case Study, Nominal Preservation and Behavioral Distortion. There was a picture of my supercar, then the bus, then the grocery bundle, then the giant inflatable chicken. I raised my hand. Why is the chicken in an economics lecture? Professor Ellis clicked to the next slide. Market signaling. The class laughed. I put my head on the desk. Then he announced the midterm. It was Friday, 3 days away. 30% of the exam would cover the Great Decimal Shift. One question would involve my own transactions. I protested. Professor Ellis told me that, if anything, I had an unfair advantage. I did not. I had lived the transactions emotionally, not mathematically. Apparently, I bought it because Conrad annoyed me was not an accepted explanation for price discovery. By Wednesday night, I was sitting in my penthouse office surrounded by textbooks. Mina quizzed me on liquidity ratios while signing grocery contracts. Marcus explained market capitalization using my own companies. Eli volunteered to make flashcards and somehow drew little flames on all of them. I had spent the week negotiating million-dollar equivalent purchases with tiny decimals. None of that helped me remember the difference between M1 and M2 when I was tired. At 11:30 p.m., I gave up and opened the office refrigerator. It contained 32 bottles of peach tea because the tea subsidiary kept sending samples. I took one. Mina took my textbook. You're overthinking this. I am literally on the exam. That should make it easier. It makes it humiliating. She flipped to a practice problem. A hypothetical investor with $100 buys a company worth $1 after the shift. What percentage of their liquid wealth was deployed? 1%, I said. Good. If the company produces $0.01 in annual profit, 1% yield on purchase price. Good. If the investor bought the company because someone insulted his parking. I looked at her. That is not in the textbook. It should be. For the first time all week, studying felt normal. Then the office windows flashed blue. A delivery drone hovered outside holding a small black box. We stared at it. Our drones did not usually deliver to the 40th floor because we had not finished getting rooftop landing permits. Ely opened the balcony door. The drone dropped the box onto the table and flew away. No company markings, no delivery receipt. Priya, who had been working in the next room, told us not to touch it. Ely had already touched it. Inside was an invitation printed on thick black paper. No logo, no sender, just a date, a time, and an address. Beneath that was a single line. Beneficiary retention is not unique. The room went quiet. I read it again. Those were the words from the settlement log. The same classification nobody outside the task force was supposed to know. Mina immediately called Evelyn Shaw. Evelyn arrived 40 minutes later with 2 analysts and the tired expression of a woman who had hoped to sleep that year. She examined the invitation. The address belonged to the Crescent Crown Hotel, where an international finance summit was scheduled for Friday night, the Global Decimal Leadership Forum. I had already received a normal invitation to the event and ignored it. Apparently someone wanted to make sure I attended. Evelyn asked who knew the beneficiary code. I listed everyone in the room. She said the exact wording had never been released publicly. That meant either someone had access to restricted settlement records or someone already knew what the code meant. Eli raised a hand. Could be a wizard. Nobody answered. He lowered his hand. Evelyn told me not to attend alone. Mina told me I was not attending at all until after the midterm. I stared at her. You're prioritizing my exam over the mysterious person who knows why I'm rich. Yes, Professor Ellis would have been proud. Friday morning, I took the midterm. Question 1 was normal. Question 2 was normal. Question 3 described student J purchasing transportation company H after overpaying a bus fare by a factor of 10,000. I raised my hand. Professor Ellis refused to look at me. The final question asked whether irrational motivation could still produce economically rational outcomes if the purchased asset contained underpriced real estate. I looked at him. He looked at me. I knew exactly what he was doing. I wrote 6 paragraphs about the Noodle Company bundle. I concluded that buying 9 companies because of instant noodles was irrational at the decision stage, but accidentally rational after identifying the warehouse land. Then I added one sentence. Also, the noodles are excellent. I turned in the exam. Professor Ellis read the last line while I was still standing there. He circled it in red. I left before he could speak. The Global Decimal Leadership Forum started at 6. I arrived with Minna, Priya, Marcus, Eli, and Evelyn. That was apparently too many people for one invitation, but the hotel staff saw my name and decided rules were flexible. The Crescent Crown looked like every luxury hotel I had ever been too broke to enter. Marble floors, huge chandeliers, people in suits who never looked at price tags. Except now everyone looked at price tags because nobody trusted decimals. A steak dinner cost $0. A penthouse suite cost $0 for the night. Valet parking cost $0. I tipped the valet exactly $0 through normal mode. He smiled. No one screamed. I considered that personal progress. Inside the ballroom were bankers, executives, investors, economists, politicians, engineers, and a surprising number of people whose only job seemed to be owning things. I recognized Adrian Cole near the stage. He raised his glass when he saw me. Valora had become one of the fastest growing payment platforms in the world after the normal mode update. My nickel investment had appreciated enough that Marcus had stopped making jokes about it. Damien was there too. He had somehow turned his racetrack loss into content and regained most of his following. He approached wearing another expensive suit and asked whether I planned to embarrass him publicly that evening. I told him I had no plans. He looked worried. You're more dangerous without plans. Also correct. The forum opened with speeches about stability and innovation. I tried to listen. Then Eli discovered the dessert table. I lost him for 20 minutes. The main attraction was a live investment showcase. 10 companies had been selected to pitch solutions for the post-shift economy, micro payroll systems, decimal accounting tools, coin exchange machines. One startup had designed a physical payment puck that could represent fractions of a cent without needing a phone. That one interested me because the university vending machine still hated modern existence. Each invited investor received a 1-cent allocation token, 1 cent to invest across the pitches however they wanted. Yesterday, 1 cent would have been pocket lint. Now it was meaningful seed capital. The organizers made a big show of calling it the Cent Fund. Eli called it Shark Tank for ants. I nearly choked on water. That was where I met Serena Vale. Serena was 26, already running a major logistics investment firm, and had the kind of reputation that made business reporters stand straighter when she entered a room. Her family had been wealthy before the shift, and remained wealthy after it because they owned huge pieces of shipping, freight, and data infrastructure. She had not been preserved like me. She had simply been rich enough that dividing by 1 million still left her with more money than most people would ever need. Her personal liquid balance was rumored to be over $600. For once, I was standing beside someone who could look at my $323 and not be impressed. She shook my hand. "So you're Jin Park?" I nodded. She looked me over. "I expected a cape." "Why?" "The internet makes you sound like a comic book billionaire. I still have a midterm grade pending." She paused. Then she laughed. I liked her immediately, which probably meant she was dangerous. Serena knew about my companies. She asked why I had bought the grocery bundle. Noodles. She stared at me. I waited. She realized I was serious. "You spent over $1 for noodles?" "There was warehouse land." "Did you know about the warehouse land before bidding?" "Eventually." She laughed again. Then she did something I had not expected. She offered to buy the whole bundle from me for $4. Marcus, standing behind me, stopped breathing. I had paid $1.30. $4 would be an absurd profit. I asked why she wanted it. Serena said the airport-adjacent distribution yard fit her logistics network. She would sell the food and entertainment companies after closing. I looked toward our buffet table. There were cups of peach tea supplied by my company. One of the snack trays had our dumplings. A tiny inflatable version of the noodle chicken was tied to a sponsor table. I imagined Serena breaking the bundle apart. No. Marcus made a tiny sound. Serena raised an eyebrow. "No negotiation?" "No." $5. "No." $6. Eli nearly fell over. I still said no. Serena studied me. Then she smiled. "You really did buy them for the noodles?" "Yes." "That may be the least efficient investment philosophy I have ever heard." "It's working, for now." She walked away. Marcus grabbed my arm. $6? I heard her. "You could have realized more than $4 in profit." "I like the chicken." Marcus stared at me. I added, "and the warehouses." He walked away to find stronger coffee. The Cent Fund pitches began. Most investors split their 1 cent among several companies. Serena allocated almost all of hers to an automated freight pricing platform. Smart choice. Adrian funded a payroll tool. Damien invested in a luxury virtual showroom because of course he did. I waited for the physical payment puck startup. The founder was a nervous engineering student named Theo Grant. His device was simple. You loaded digital microvalue onto a small rechargeable puck, then tapped it on compatible machines. It could handle 9 decimal places without exposing your full bank balance. He demonstrated it on a vending machine. The machine accepted $0 and dispensed a soda. The room clapped politely. I stood up. Can it work with old campus laundry machines? Theo blinked. Yes. Parking meters? Yes. Arcade cabinets? He smiled. Yes. I allocated my entire 1 cent. The room murmured. Theo looked stunned. Serena leaned toward me from the next table. One company? My washing machines are annoying. She shook her head. I was becoming predictable. After the pitches, the organizers announced a surprise demonstration challenge. Each funded startup had 20 minutes to integrate with some broken piece of hotel payment infrastructure. Most chose cash registers or kiosks. Theo chose the hotel's ancient coin-operated luggage lockers. He clipped a tiny receiver onto one lock, tapped the puck, and opened it with a payment of $0. Then he repeated it 10 times. No rounding error, no network delay, no app. Hotel managers swarmed him. So did parking companies, laundromat operators, arcades, and transit representatives. Mr. Han, watching the live stream somewhere, texted me one word. Buses? I replied, probably. By the end of the night, Theo's company had more pilot requests than employees. My 1 cent allocation looked brilliant. It was not brilliant. I just hated laundry machines. Serena found me near the balcony. You keep making good investments for stupid reasons. I prefer practical reasons. You invested 10,000 old dollar equivalent because you did not want to carry quarters. Exactly. Practical. She looked like she was trying not to smile. Then her expression changed. She looked over my shoulder. What is that? I turned. Across the ballroom near the service entrance, a waiter had stopped moving, so had 3 guests around him. A woman in a plain beige coat stood beside the coat check desk. She looked about 60. Gray hair tied back, canvas handbag, comfortable shoes. Nothing about her belonged in a ballroom full of billionaires, except what was in her hand. She was holding a $20 bill, a full physical 20. The people around her stared exactly the way the bus passengers had stared at me. My whole body went cold. The woman handed the bill to the coat check attendant. The attendant did not take it. She smiled, said something I could not hear, and put it back in her bag. Then she looked across the ballroom, directly at me. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Then she turned and walked to the service door. I ran. Mina shouted my name. Evelyn followed. Serena followed too, apparently deciding mystery was more interesting than finance. I pushed through the service door into a hallway full of carts and stacked tablecloths. No woman. I ran left. Kitchen. Right. Loading dock. A delivery truck was pulling away. Evelyn called hotel security. Mina checked the exit camera. The woman had walked toward the loading area, but one camera froze for 9 seconds at exactly the wrong moment. By the time it came back, she was gone. On the floor beside the service door was a small white card. My name was written on it, Jin Park. Underneath were 4 words. You spent yours quickly. I read the sentence 3 times. Then I turned the card over. A number was written on the back. 7. Evelyn looked at it. Her face changed. What? I asked. She did not answer immediately. Then her phone rang. She listened for less than 10 seconds. Her expression became even stranger. She ended the call. Jin, your preservation event was not unique. I looked at the service door. I gathered that. No. We confirmed another one. My stomach tightened. How much? Evelyn looked at me. Not $20. She turned her phone around. A newly reopened regional bank had just completed post-shift account verification. One dormant account had been marked with the same exclusion class as mine. Beneficiary retention. The account had not been touched in 11 years. The balance was unchanged. $14,208.62. I stared at it. Eli arrived behind us, out of breath. He looked at the number. Then he looked at me. Jin. Yes, you're poor again. For some reason that was the funniest thing anyone had said all week. The dormant account belonged to a woman named Mabel Kwan, age 68. Retired school librarian. No criminal history. No business empire. No secret hedge fund. No underground banking network. According to the bank, she had opened the account 11 years earlier to save money for a kitchen renovation, forgotten about it after changing banks, and never closed it. $14,208.62 had been sitting there doing nothing for more than a decade. At midnight during the Great Decimal Shift, the account had been skipped exactly like mine. Evelyn pulled up Mabel's identification photo. Same gray hair, same face, same woman from the hotel. I stared at it. So the mysterious legacy billionaire is a retired librarian? Apparently. Eli looked delighted. I knew librarians were hiding power. Serena, who had followed us all the way into the hotel security office despite having no official reason to be there, folded her arms. $14,000. Marcus finally arrived and heard the number. He sat down. I understood. Compared with Mabel, my $300 looked like lunch money. Then I remembered what lunch money meant now and felt worse. Evelyn called the number associated with Mabel's bank file. No answer. She called again. No answer. Hotel security checked every exit. Nothing. The woman had disappeared from the cameras after walking through the loading dock. I looked at the white card again. You spent yours quickly. I could not even argue. I had spent several dollars in less than a week and somehow collected a university operating company, a dealership, a grocery chain, warehouses, drones, noodles, dumplings, arcades, an esports team, tea, and giant inflatable birds. If Mabel had done nothing with her preserved money, she was financially destroying me through patience alone. Eli leaned over my shoulder. Do you think she owns a secret castle already? She was a librarian. Exactly. Maximum secret castle profession. Evelyn told us to go home. Nobody went home. We went back to Park Holdings. It was almost midnight by the time we reached the penthouse office. The giant inflatable chicken on the roof had partially deflated and was leaning against the window like a drunk guardian spirit. I was too tired to fix it. Mina ordered food. Marcus opened 6 financial databases. Priya searched public records on Mabel. Evelyn made calls to people who sounded increasingly unhappy to be awake. Serena stayed. I asked why. She looked at me like the answer was obvious. Someone with 14,000 unshifted dollars just walked through a finance conference carrying a 20 in her purse. I am not going to bed. Fair. Damien somehow showed up too. Nobody invited him. He claimed he had information. His information was that the dessert table had been cleared early and he was angry about it. Mina tried to send him away. Then he noticed Mabel's photo on the screen. I saw her earlier. Everyone turned. Damien pointed at the hotel image. She was in the lobby before the conference. She asked me where the bus student was. I stared at him. And you didn't think that was important? I assumed she wanted a selfie. What exactly did she say? He thought. She asked, where is the boy who wasted $1 on public transportation? Eli covered his mouth. Serena laughed. I felt insulted by a woman I had met for 3 seconds. Damien said he pointed her toward the ballroom. Then she asked whether I was still driving that silver doorstop. I stood up. She insulted my car? Mina pushed me back into the chair. Focus. Damien remembered one more detail. Mabel had been carrying a paper shopping bag from a bakery called Morning Bell. Priya searched it. There were 12 Morning Bell bakeries in the region. Marcus checked Mabel's public address. One location was 4 blocks from her apartment. Evelyn called local security. I grabbed my jacket. Mina looked at me. No, she might be there. It is after midnight. It's a bakery. The bakery is closed. I checked the listing. Open 24 hours. Mina stared at the screen. I smiled. Luxury road trip. Ely was already at the elevator. Serena came too. Damien came because nobody successfully stopped him. Marcus refused and stayed with the coffee. Priya said she would work remotely because, unlike the rest of us, she respected sleep. Evelyn rode with her own team. I drove the silver supercar. Mina sat beside me. Eli and Damien fought over who had to squeeze into the tiny rear seats until Serena looked at both of them and took a government car instead. We arrived at Morning Bell at 12:31 a.m. The bakery was almost empty. One employee stood behind the counter. A college student worked on a laptop near the window. And in the corner, drinking tea with a slice of pie, sat Mabel Kwan. She looked up when we entered. No surprise. No panic. No attempt to run. She simply checked the wall clock. Took you long enough. Evelyn stopped 3 steps inside. I walked toward the table. Mabel pointed to the empty chair across from her. Sit. I sat. I had negotiated with CEOs, government officials, university boards, and luxury auctioneers that week. Somehow this retired librarian made me feel like I had returned a book late. She looked at my hoodie. You dress like the videos. I was not aware I had a dress code. You do now. Then she pushed a second slice of pie toward me. I looked at it. What is this? Apple. I can see that. You look hungry. My mother would have liked her. I took a bite. It was excellent. Mabel looked at Evelyn. You people froze my account. Evelyn said the hold was temporary. Mabel said she had tried to pay a plumber that afternoon and her card declined. Evelyn apologized. Mabel did not look impressed. Then she turned back to me. I saw your bus video. Everybody did. You should count your change. I know that now. You bought a car with coins. Yes, you bought a school. Only part of the operating company. That is not better. Eli made a choking sound behind me. Mabel continued listing my purchases like a disappointed auditor. The apartment building, the dealership, the noodle bundle. She knew almost everything. When she reached the inflatable mascot company, she paused. That one was smart. I stared at her. Thank you. They have excellent margins. Marcus would have loved her. Finally, I asked the important question. How did you know the words beneficiary retention? Mabel took a slow sip of tea. I didn't. I frowned. She reached into her canvas handbag. Everyone tensed. She pulled out an envelope. Plain black paper. Same as the invitation delivered to my office. She placed it on the table. I received this 2 days ago. Evelyn put on gloves before touching it. Inside was a single card. Mabel Kwan. Friday, 6 p.m. Crescent Crown Hotel. Find Jin Park. Give him the number 7. That was all. No explanation. No signature. Mabel said she almost threw it away. Then her old bank called and told her a forgotten account still contained $14,208.62. She assumed the call was a scam. She hung up. They called again from the local branch. She went in person. The branch manager met her at the door. 3 lawyers were waiting. 2 federal analysts joined by video. Someone offered her sparkling water. That was when she knew something was wrong. They showed her the unchanged balance. She asked to withdraw $20. The manager nearly fainted. I laughed. Mabel glared at me. You gave away a whole dollar on a bus. Do not judge me. Fair. The bank would not give her $20 in physical cash because ordinary branches no longer carried large valid legacy denominations. But Mabel had cash at home. A few bills in an envelope she kept for emergencies. Those bills, like mine, were still recognized as preserved tender. The 20 at the hotel had come from that envelope. I asked why she showed it publicly. She shrugged. The coat check boy wanted a tip. $20? I could not find anything smaller. Eli whispered, Legend. Mabel looked at him. He became quiet instantly. She had attended the forum because of the mysterious card. She found me, delivered the number, and left because she hated crowds. I pointed at my card. You wrote you spent yours quickly. Yes. So that part was you, obviously. Why? Because you did. I had no defense. Evelyn asked whether Mabel knew what the 7 meant. She did not. Then Evelyn asked whether she had received any other messages. Mabel thought. 1. Everyone leaned forward. She took out her phone. The font size was enormous. She opened a text from an unknown number. Do not deposit your emergency cash until all 7 are awake. Nobody spoke. Mabel looked around. That sounded dramatic, so I ignored it. I liked her more every minute. Evelyn photographed the message. Then the bakery employee approached our table. He looked nervous. Sorry, but are you Jin Park? I said yes. He looked at Mabel. And are you the $20 lady? Mabel frowned. Apparently. The employee held out the check. 2 teas. 2 slices of pie. Total $0. Mabel reached for her bag. Every person at the table shouted no at the same time. The entire bakery turned toward us. Mabel froze with one eyebrow raised. I pulled out my phone. I'm paying. Young man, I can afford pie. So can I. I have $14,000. I know. You have 300. Please stop saying that like I'm broke. You are... compared with me. Eli walked outside because he was laughing too loudly. I paid through normal mode. Exact amount. Mabel examined the app. She had never installed it. 5 minutes later, I was teaching a woman worth 14,000 preserved dollars how to pay 18 millionths of a dollar for pie. This was my life now. She tapped the screen once. Useful. Thank you. You invested in this? 5 cents. She stared at me. I corrected myself. Technically, the first investment was a nickel. She stared harder. Jin. Yes? You may actually be insane. I could not argue with a librarian. By 2 in the morning, Evelyn had convinced Mabel to come to the task force office the next day for a full review. Mabel agreed only after making them promise not to freeze her debit card again. Then she asked me for a ride home. I looked at my supercar. I looked at Mabel. She looked at the car. No. What? I am not folding myself into that silver shoe. Serena laughed so suddenly she had to turn away. Mabel rode with Evelyn. I drove back to the office in silence. Mina finally said, silver shoe. Don't. It is accurate. It is a 6-figure engineering machine. It cost 31 cents. Emotionally, it cost more. When we reached Park Holdings, Marcus was asleep at the conference table with a spreadsheet still open. The giant chicken had fully deflated and now covered half the rooftop garden. Eli threw a blanket over Marcus. Mina turned off the main lights. For the first time in days, everything became quiet. I stood by the window overlooking the city. A week earlier, I had been calculating how many instant noodle bricks I could stretch until payday. Now I had more companies than pairs of decent shoes. Somewhere across town, a retired librarian had 40 times my preserved wealth, and someone knew about both of us before we did. I checked my bank account. $322.74. I had spent less than $5 of my original balance. That was the truly ridiculous part. After everything, I still had almost all of it. My phone buzzed. I expected another email from Evelyn. Instead, it was Professor Ellis. Midterm grade posted. I opened it. 92. I stared at the number. Then I saw his comment beneath the final question. Economically questionable. Well argued. Noodles are not evidence. I smiled. That might have been the best thing that happened all week. Then another notification appeared. Park Holdings security alert. Someone was at our ground floor lobby asking for me. At 2:17 in the morning, the front desk camera loaded. A delivery driver stood beside a wooden crate. The crate was the size of a washing machine. A white envelope was taped to the top. Eli woke Marcus by accident while running to the elevator. Within 30 seconds, everyone was awake again. I went downstairs with Mina and security. The driver said the crate had been prepaid for delivery. No sender information. Priya joined by video call and told us once again not to open mysterious packages. This time we listened. Security scanned it. No electronics. No dangerous materials, mostly paper and metal. Evelyn returned because apparently sleep had officially left her life. We opened the crate in the loading bay. Inside were 7 smaller black boxes. 6 were locked. 1 was open. The open box had my name engraved inside. Jin Park. Under my name was a number. $327.14. My original balance from the morning of the shift, not my current balance. Original. Below it was a small metal token stamped with the number 7. Evelyn picked up the token. The other 6 boxes had no names on the outside. Each had a metal number plate, 1 through 6. Mabel had received 7 because I was number 7. That seemed obvious now. The question was what the other 6 boxes contained. We examined the locks. No keyholes, only small digital screens. The screen on box 6 suddenly turned on. Everyone stepped back. A line of text appeared. Beneficiary 6 confirmed awake. Then a number appeared beneath it. $14,208.62. Mabel. So she was number 6. I looked at box 5. Dark. Box 4. Dark. 3, 2, 1. Nothing. Eli whispered. This is the coolest loot box I have ever seen. Mina told him not to call it that. Then box 5 turned on. Nobody touched it. The screen flickered. Beneficiary 5 confirmed awake. A balance appeared. $803. I blinked. That's not too bad. Marcus stared at me. It is more than twice your original balance. Yes, but after Mabel, 800 feels emotionally manageable. A second line appeared. Primary preserved asset, private aircraft. Eli slowly smiled. Oh. The screen added another line. Registered nominal value. $4,600,000. Marcus made a sound I had never heard from a human accountant. I remembered my bicycle. My stupid $90 bicycle that the preservation system still treated as $90. If Beneficiary 5 owned a private aircraft before midnight, and its registered nominal value had been preserved exactly like my personal assets, then their cash was not the important part. The plane itself still existed in the system as a $4.6 million asset in a world where entire companies traded for less than $10. Mina looked at me. That is a problem. Eli looked thrilled. That is a sky problem. The screen changed again. Asset transfer initiated. Evelyn shouted for someone to disconnect the crate. There was nothing to disconnect. The boxes had no visible power source. On the lobby television behind us, a breaking news banner appeared. A major international aircraft manufacturer had halted trading after receiving an unusual acquisition filing. Someone had just offered a preserved value aircraft as collateral for a controlling stake. The filing had been accepted by an automated settlement system before regulators could stop it. The buyer's identity was hidden behind a newly created holding company. The company name appeared on screen. Paper Plane Capital. Eli whispered. I like them already. I did not. My phone rang. Unknown number. Everyone looked at me. I answered on speaker. A young woman's voice came through. Jin Park? Yes. She sounded cheerful. Hi. I'm pretty sure we have the same weird money problem. I looked at box 5. Do you own an airplane? There was a pause. Technically, my dad gave it to me for my 18th birthday, but yes. Eli silently mouthed. What? The woman continued. I just found out the stupid thing is still valued at $4.6 million, and some computer let me use it to buy part of an aircraft company. I closed my eyes. Why did you do that? I wanted cheaper maintenance. Serena, who had somehow returned with Evelyn and was standing near the loading bay door, started laughing. The woman on the phone continued. Anyway, a black box showed up at my house with the number 5, and your name was on a note inside. It said to call you when I woke up financially. That phrase bothered me. What is your name? Cass Monroe. I had heard the name somewhere. Damien, who was now watching through a video call because Mina had finally sent him home, suddenly yelled through the phone. Cass Monroe was the daughter of a famous stunt pilot and a social media disaster magnate who had once landed a small plane at a drive-through charity event. Of course she was. Of course Beneficiary 5 owned a plane. Cass asked where we were. I gave her the address before Mina could stop me. Great, Cass said. I'll come over. Now? Yeah. It's 2:30 in the morning. I'm awake. How far away are you? About an hour by road. I heard an engine start in the background. Then she added, 12 minutes by air. I looked at the rooftop garden. I looked at the enormous deflated chicken lying across it. Do not land on my roof. Cass laughed. No promises. The call ended. Eli ran toward the elevator. Chicken emergency. For the next 10 minutes, 6 adults tried to drag a giant inflatable noodle mascot off a rooftop because a newly awakened preserved money heiress might arrive by aircraft. This was somehow not the strangest part. The strangest part was box 4. While we were wrestling the chicken through the rooftop doors, the 4th screen came alive downstairs. Marcus saw it first. He shouted my name. I ran back into the loading bay. Box 4 displayed the same message. Beneficiary 4 confirmed awake. Then the balance appeared. $62,440.09. Nobody laughed. Not even Eli. 62,000 preserved dollars. Almost 200 times my original balance. Then the screen added the preserved asset line. Primary preserved asset. Commercial real estate portfolio. A second number began loading. Evelyn stared at it. Marcus stared at it. Mina stared at it. I stared at it. The number stopped. $1,870,000,000. $1.87 billion of pre-shift nominal property value. Preserved inside a world where luxury towers cost less than $1 modern dollar in ordinary market terms. My mouth went dry. Eli finally spoke. Okay. He pointed at the box. That one is not poor. Before anyone could answer, every phone in the room buzzed at once. News alert. An anonymous buyer had just purchased the entire Crescent Crown Hotel, the same hotel where we had been standing a few hours earlier. Purchase price $0.74. Then the buyer purchased the neighboring office tower, $0.62. Then the parking structure, $0.11. Then 3 more downtown properties, not random properties. They formed a perfect square around one city block. At the center of that block was a tiny 24-hour convenience store. The store where I had placed a penny on the counter on the first morning of the shift. The same store manager who had asked if I wanted to buy the building. I stared at the map. Mina stared at me. Evelyn's phone rang again. This time she did not answer. A message appeared on my own screen from an unknown sender. No greeting, no explanation, just one sentence. Beneficiary 4 has reserved the board. Then a second message arrived. Bring your dollar. I looked at the preserved $1 bill from the bus, still sealed in the protective sleeve Evelyn had given back to me. I had kept it in my backpack because apparently I learned nothing. Outside, somewhere above the city, I heard the growing sound of an aircraft engine. Cass was coming. Downstairs, box 4 glowed. Boxes 3, 2, and 1 were still dark. And for the first time since I had stepped onto that bus with $327 to my name, I finally understood something important. I had not become the richest idiot in the world. I had only been the first one to wake up.